LoveLore Library. Chapter 163. Not to mention the others, even Madame Luo was shocked. This was a sign of paralysis even if she didn't die. Madame Luo calmed down and asked, "Where is your third master?" Replying to Madame Luo, "He should be entering the door soon. I came back first to report. As soon as I saw Madame Luo, I went to the main courtyard to report to you. When I learned that you came to 3rd Mrs. Courtyard, I was anxious and chased after you." Madame Luo immediately made a decision. "Old doctor, I'll have to trouble you to go to the 3rd branch. This old one will understand the matter clearly and go there immediately. As for the matter here, I asked the old doctor to take care of it." Presumably, Madame Lu also sent someone to invite him, but he also missed the opportunity. At this moment, that servant was probably also on the way to Begonia House. Madame Luo is too polite. Since he was the consecrated doctor, he must keep his mouth shut in addition to doing things for the Luo family. However, she had just found out that she was pregnant, and such a disaster had happened over there. After all, it was not a good sign. "Madame Luo, this old man is not particularly good at treating this kind of illness. This old man suggests that you ask the Imperial Hospital for help. It's more appropriate." Well, it was still necessary to have self-awareness. Many thanks for the old doctor's reminder. She turned around and asked her mother to go back to the main courtyard to get Luo Peishan's invitation. The old doctor cupped his hands and left first. After he left, Madame Luo began to interrogate the whole story. "You should tell me everything clearly. Where did 3rd Miss fall off the horse and why? Now that something happened to 3rd Miss, you people who serve her can't escape the blame." The servant trembled and began to narrate. "Today, 3rd Master invited someone to go out of the city to ride a horse. When they arrived at Prince Kang's farmstead, they were interested and said that they wanted to go hunting, so they went into the forest. 3rd Master and the others ran very fast. By the time this little one chased after them, something had already happened." Madame Luo frowned. "Your 3rd Master doesn't like to ride horses, let alone hunt. Why would he participate in it for no reason? Who took the lead? Moreover, it's not his turn to rest today." "Old Madam, it was Prince Kang's close associate who led the group. There were also several young masters from other families. There were a total of 7 or 8 people, all of whom were more or less related to Prince Kang. 3rd young master said that it was not good to refuse, so he changed the day of his holiday with the people from the yamen. This was a disaster waiting to happen." However, Madame Luo suddenly realized that there must be something wrong with this. It seemed obvious who did it. Moreover, Prince Kang also had a motive to do this to the 3rd prince. The 3rd prince used to rely on him, but now his legitimate daughter had entered Prince Rui's mansion. Moreover, he had a bad temper and dared to betray him. Naturally, he would want to make up for it, or even kill the chicken to warn the monkey. However, Madame Luo's intuition told her that this matter was not so simple. Prince Kang's brain was not as smart as Prince Rui's, but he would not be so obvious. However, she could not rule out the possibility that he deliberately arranged this, which would make people think that someone was framing him. As for the specifics, he would have to rely on his master to investigate. "Why did you send your 3rd master back? Why didn't you go straight to the clinic after entering the city?" The servant swallowed his saliva. "Old Madam, they refused to take over." She understood. They were too seriously injured and were afraid that he would die in their clinic. Under normal circumstances, relatives would vent their anger on them. This was because they were worried that it would bring disaster to the clinic. However, none of the people who went with him came out to vouch for him. They went back after entering the city. Madame Luo sneered. A group of cowards. However, did they think that they could get away with this? If a man stood out to take charge, the Luo family might not do anything. However, since they were cowards, then don't blame the Luo family for being impolite. Go directly to the Yamen of the Ministry of Personnel and report this matter to my master. Yes. The servant hurriedly left. Madame Luo turned her head to look at Sun Yijia, who was rubbing her stomach with a pale face, and Luo Jingbua, who was standing beside her with his mouth tightly pursed. Don't let your imagination run wild. This has nothing to do with your child. However, Yijia, you can't report the good news to your mother for the time being. You have to rest for a while. As for the food, you don't have a small kitchen in your courtyard, so you can use one that's Wan. It's close, so it won't be inconvenient. Similarly, I'll build one for you after this period of time. Later, I'll have someone send you some money and send someone to buy it outside. Each branch had their own custom of buying things in private, so it wouldn't be conspicuous. Sun Yijia was naturally grateful for Madame Luo's arrangement. She was afraid that her child would be known as a jinx. However, she said, "Grandmother, there's no need for the money." Granddaughter-in-law. Madame Luo waved her hand to interrupt her. What the family should give you naturally can't be less. Every daughter-in-law of the Luo family is the same. Your own dowry is another matter. How you want to use it is also your own business. How can you confuse it with the portion that you deserve? You should pay special attention to this point. Only take it out when it's time to take it out, and when it's time to accept it, you must accept it. If you only take it out and don't take it in, after a long time, people will take it for granted and it will also increase the appetite of some people. When you don't take it out, it will instead become your fault. Thank you for your teachings, grandmother. An elder who didn't mean well for her absolutely wouldn't say such words. Alright, hurry and wash off the makeup on your face. Jingbua, take good care of your wife. I'll go to the third branch to take a look. With Jingda's daughter-in-law as an example, Madame Luo now couldn't bear to see a pregnant woman put on makeup. Moreover, Sun Yijia didn't use makeup powder. Who knew if there was something harmful in it? Although she knew that if Wan dared to use something on her face, she should have already thought about it. Normally, there wouldn't be any problems. But now, both mother and son were delicate, so she had to be careful. Who in the Luo family didn't know about little Wang Shi's matter? Most likely, many relatives also knew. Only then did the husband and wife realize it. They hurriedly asked someone to fetch water to wash their faces. After that, they wouldn't be able to put on makeup for a long time. Originally, every time Sun Yijia came back from going out, she would wash her face immediately. But today, she was worried about Jingwan and was anxious, so she forgot to do it. Grandmother, I'll go too. Jingwan followed. Madame Luo glanced at her. Change your clothes and come back. Although these words were very normal, Jingwan couldn't help but blush. She felt uncomfortable that everything was seen through. Moreover, third uncle was seriously injured and she didn't know if he could survive. Her clothes were indeed a little delicate. Grandmother, go ahead first. I'll come after I change my clothes. Madame Luo nodded and left with her people. Jingbua, let's go and take a look too. After Sun Yijia finished washing her face, she whispered to him. Luo Jingbua frowned subconsciously. It's probably a busy time over there. We won't be able to see third uncle. Also, what if you get hurt? I guess the younger generation of each branch hasn't received the news yet. Let's wait. If something happens, grandmother will probably send someone to inform us. Also, if little sister wants to go, she has always been reliable. Even if grandmother forgets, she definitely won't. Sun Yijia thought about it and agreed. The child in her belly was the most important thing now. Jingwan changed her clothes and came out of the room. She was dressed plainly, but it didn't affect her temperament at all. Luo Jingbua reminded her twice. Jingwan nodded, don't worry. Sister-in-law, just take care of yourself and don't worry about anything else. When Jingwan arrived at the third branch, eldest Aunt Madame Wang, fourth Aunt Madame Wu, and her mother were all there. As for the other women, they must be third uncle's concubines. Ah, this number was really large. The other three brothers probably only had this many concubines, right? Grandfather might not like third uncle, but in terms of teaching, there shouldn't be too much of a difference. But why was the final result like this? Was it really because of their own problems? These women cried endlessly, but with grandmother outside, they didn't dare to cry too loudly. They only sobbed softly. She wondered if these women were really sad or worried about their future. If Luo Rongbing died, the Luo family wouldn't ignore them. But if they didn't have children, they would be in danger. Among these people, there were no good concubines or noble concubines. If Madame Lu was ruthless, she could sell them all. Therefore, they didn't want Luo Rongbing to die the most. That's right, they just didn't want him to die. Anyway, when he was well, they were also neglected and paralyzed in bed. Jingwan didn't see concubine Huan, who made third uncle and third aunt completely fall out with each other. Concubine Huan was probably serving in the room. She was also pregnant now, so she wasn't afraid of accidentally bumping into her. Speaking of which, these women's clothes were really very ordinary. To be honest, Jingwan felt that they couldn't even compare to the maids by her side. Compared to the other branches, the third branch was indeed a lot poorer, but it shouldn't be to this extent, right? Was it because Madame Lu embezzled, or they really didn't have the money to support them? Maybe it was both. In the Luo family, each man's concubines were only given to 3 people. If there were more, they would raise them themselves. Luo Rongbing obviously didn't have the money to raise them, but he raised so many of them. After a while, he threw them aside and didn't care about them. What was going on? It was no wonder that Madame Lu was so ruthless to them. As for why she didn't sell them, not only did it cost money to raise them, but it also made people uncomfortable. Perhaps, as the saying goes, if the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Madame Lu probably wanted Luo Rongbing to see. There was already a pile of them in the room. How to raise them? In the beginning, he had not been able to take out anything decent to please the beauty. Based on his character of wanting to save face and putting up a false front, he would probably be too embarrassed to bring anything into the room. As for asking him to sell it himself, don't joke around. This kind of losing face. If he gave them away, he could still make friends with them, but he would probably be beaten half to death by Luo Peishan. Seeing Jingwan, Madame Zhang hurriedly came up. Wan, I just heard that the doctor came from your place. Are you feeling unwell? Why didn't you tell me? Mother, I'm fine. I probably used some ice last night. The doctor has already seen me. I don't need to take any medicine. I was going to tell you, but I didn't have time. Madame Zhang was relieved when she heard this. I know you suffer from summer, but it's still early from the hottest time. You can't use the ice basin now. Otherwise, when it's the hottest time, the basin will still be hot. It's not good for a girl to be exposed to too much cold air. I know, Mother. There's no need. Madame Zhang still wanted to say something, but Jingwan gently squeezed her hand, so she swallowed back her words. Jingwan respectfully greeted the others. Needless to say, Madame Luo had always liked Jingwan, and Madame Wang was grateful to Jingwan because of Madame Wang's matter. Naturally, they all hurriedly asked her to get up. In the Luo family, no one else received this treatment except her. Jingwan sat next to Madame Luo. Grandmother, how is the situation? Madame Luo's face was cold and solemn. It's worse than expected. The doctor is not sure. However, even if a divine doctor comes, the best-case scenario is that he will be paralyzed in bed. The worst-case scenario, needless to say, everyone knew that if something went wrong, the Luo family would have to hold a funeral. Jingwan also did not expect that her third uncle would fall into such a situation. Although Luo Jingying did not get along with her, Madame Lu was scheming and could not bear to see others doing well, and Luo Romping was utilitarian and wanted to climb up the social ladder. None of them were likable. However, Jingwan only disliked them, but she did not hate them. One had to know that it took effort to hate a person. Jingwan was too lazy to waste her energy on them. Therefore, she did not want them to die. What was the saying in her previous life? If they are not doing well, I will be relieved. Jingwan had a bit of this mentality. As for these three people, if they had not already arrived at their bad destination, then they were on their way to their destination. Jingwan would not go against her heart and say that she was sad about her third uncle's situation. She just felt a little sad. However, the three little children of the third branch were all there. Only the legitimate son, Luo Xiaoba, was not there. As for the eldest son, Luo Jingming, he should still be attending classes at the Imperial College. Where is Xiaoba? Is he still studying at home? It's better to have someone bring him back. Madame Luo nodded. Yes, we should bring him back. Otherwise, if something happens. Also, Jingming, go to the Imperial College and inform him to come back quickly. Also, go inform Area. The people of the third branch could not leave at this time. Madame Luo directly sent someone to pick up Luo Xiaoba, but the person who came to pick him up came back very quickly. However, when she saw his appearance, Madame Luo could not help but burn with anger. Not only was his body dirty, but he was also crying. This child was already 9 years old, not 3 years old. How did he end up like this? What exactly is going on here? Where is the person who served him? Where the hell did he go? Madame Luo was quite fond of the children of the third branch, except for Luo Jingying. Madame Lu's treatment of her two children could be said to be completely opposite. Not only did she not let the slightest bit of dirt on her son, she even raised him to be a little too pure and even a little delicate like a girl. In addition, his temperament was not bad and he liked quite a lot of people. How could she not be angry when he ended up like this in her own home? The manservant behind her scrambled in and without saying anything, he directly knelt down and kowtowed to beg for forgiveness. This manservant was only 2 or 3 years older than Luo Xiaoba. At this time, he was quite frightened. Jingwan hurriedly got up and comforted the still sobbing Luo Xiaoba. Together with Mama Gong, she took him to wash up and change his clothes. However, as soon as they stepped out of the door, they met the maidservants and wet nurses who rushed over. When they saw Luo Xiaoba's appearance, they even forgot to greet Jingwan and kept saying, "Little ancestor, how did you end up like this?" Jingwan looked at them coldly. She did not care whether they were sincere or not. Hurry up and take him to wash up. Facing Jingwan's cold eyes, the maidservants and wet nurses could not help but tremble and hurriedly responded. Jingwan narrowed her eyes. "Mama Gong, you go with them." Mama Gong also knew what Jingwan meant. There was a little ghost around the 8th young master, but she did not know who it was. She was too lazy to ask about Madame Lu's matter. But now that they met, Luo Xiaoba's surname was Luo, and he was the master. How could she watch him be bullied by some demons and monsters? Yes, Mississippi. Jingwan went back and heard the servant's narration. It was indeed a lesson at home, but she did not know why Luo Xiaoba suddenly wanted to come back. Luo Xiaoba had always been obedient at home. When he asked the teacher for leave, the teacher also agreed. However, as soon as he entered the courtyard of the third branch, the servant needed to pee, so he left for a while. But when he came back, he was gone. He stopped a passerby and asked about it, and then hurriedly came back. When he saw his master again, he was already like this. That is to say, he did not know what happened when he left. Was the servant's departure just a coincidence, or was it deliberate? It was a crime to leave without taking good care of his master. Seeing that he was still young, Madame Louve gave him a light punishment and only gave him 10 strokes. Madame Louve naturally cared more about her son. She had been sitting in the room. When she heard that something happened to her son, she hurriedly came out. But when she saw Madame Luo's cold face, she hurriedly stopped. A woman's husband was the sky. At this moment, she did not know whether her husband was alive or not. But because of her son's trivial matter, she did not care about her husband. Mother. Her lips trembled. She did not know how to speak. Do you think I'll let my grandson suffer a loss? Mother, I didn't mean that. Then I'll have to trouble you. She reluctantly turned back. When Luo Xiaoba was brought back, other than his eyes being a little red, there was no other problem. Madame Luo, when I was changing 8th young master's clothes, I saw that 8th young master's hands and knees were bruised. This servant took the initiative to ask. 8th young master said that his servant went to the toilet. He was about to come back to find 3rd madam, but he was suddenly pushed and fell to the ground. Not only was he bruised, but he was also pressed down on the ground. That servant told him that 3rd young master is gone, and 3rd madam is not liked by you. In the future, he will be a pitiful worm in the Luo family. Madame Luo stroked her sleeves. He really has guts. It was not a heavy sentence, but even Madame Wang, who had been in charge of the family for many years, could not help but tense up when she heard it. Madame Luo waved at Luo Xiaoba. Xiaoba, come here. Grandmother, Luo Xiaoba went over. Is my father really gone? Do you really not like me anymore? Don't listen to those people's nonsense. Your father was accidentally injured. Nothing will happen. Our Xiaoba has always been an obedient child. How can grandmother not like him? Tell grandmother, who was the person who said these words to you and pushed you? Madame Lu usually looked fierce, but now she couldn't even manage her own courtyard. Grandmother, I don't know. I was pushed from behind. It seemed to be a maid in a green dress. Except for the people in this room, gather all the servants of the 3rd branch. Eldest daughter-in-law, you deal with this matter. If there is anything wrong, don't be polite. They will all be sold as guilty slaves. Yes, mother. First aunt, I have a small suggestion. I don't know if I can say it. Jingwan stopped Madame Wang. What can't you say? Just say it. 3rd young lady has always been smart. Maybe you can quickly find the real culprit. First aunt, you flatter me. Separate everyone and find more people. At the same time, ask them what they have done, who they have seen, and even what they have said during this period of time. Record them one by one. Madame Wang immediately understood after Jingwan said this. Her eyes lit up. 3rd young lady, this is a good idea. After comparing them one by one, it will be clear at a glance who is the culprit. We can even extend the time. Those who are alone will also know if they are doing what they were supposed to do. Jingwan nodded. First aunt, you are very thoughtful. 3rd young lady, don't flatter me. Then, they just had to wait for the results. However, the imperial physician had not arrived and the situation inside was getting worse. The physician was now trying his best to keep 3rd Master Luo alive. As for the concubines outside, even though Madame Luo was there, they couldn't help but cry even louder. Madame Luo had a headache because of them, but she didn't say anything to stop them. Luo Jingming hurried back. His forehead was covered in sweat and his face was red. When he entered, he couldn't stop panting. Grandmother, father. How is father? It's not good. The imperial physician hasn't arrived yet. Sit down and rest for a while. Why hasn't the imperial physician arrived yet? Luo Jingming was in disbelief. The imperial hospital was obviously much closer to his home. I'll go out and take a look. Then, he turned and left without giving anyone any chance to stop him. Madame Luo sighed. When the Lu matriarch married into the family, Luo Jingming was already born, and he was a boy. It wasn't hard to imagine that he was definitely a thorn in the Lu matriarch's side. In less than half a year, Luo Jingming's own concubine died. She committed suicide, and the Lu matriarch was framed. In reality, many people knew that the Lu matriarch didn't do it. However, everyone knew that the Lu matriarch would make a move on the mother and son sooner or later. If the Lu matriarch simply died, she could still protect her son. Thus, even if the Lu matriarch felt like there was a fishbone stuck in her throat, she didn't dare to do anything. When Luo Jingming was enlightened, he was assigned to live in the outer courtyard. Among the brothers, he was the youngest to live alone. It was also because of this that although he hated the Lu matriarch, he wasn't blinded by reason. On the contrary, this tender seedling was perfectly straight and was growing healthily. He was very outstanding, and he wasn't any worse than the legitimate sons of the first and second branches. Luo Romping also thought highly of him. However, with Luo Peishan watching over him, it didn't matter if he pretended to obey, but if he brought his son along, Luo Peishan would definitely beat him to death. It was also because of this that the relationship between the father and son was actually relatively pure. Therefore, Luo Jingming really admired Luo Romping. Luo Romping was his closest relative by blood. Therefore, if something really happened to Luo Romping, Luo Jingming would be the only one who would be heartbroken and in pain. Then, not long after, Luo Jingming ran back with a person on his back. There was no doubt that that person was the imperial physician. Just by listening to the sound of running outside the door, one could tell how fast he ran. After entering the door, he staggered and almost fell. Fortunately, he was quickly pulled back by the people around him. Imperial physician, I'm sorry for troubling you. Luo Jingming's legs turned to jelly and he almost fell again. Previously, his face was flushed because of the vigorous running, but now it was a little green. This wasn't a good thing. All right, you should quickly rest by yourself. Imperial physician, please come in, Madame Luo said. The old imperial physician was quite old. At first, he was very displeased when he was treated so rudely, but now he was a little envious. What a filial child. The imperial physician went in and was about to help Luo Jingming sit down when Jingwan hurriedly stopped him. She asked the servant to help Luo Jingming walk around. If he couldn't be helped, she would find someone else to help him. In short, he couldn't stop and rest immediately. Jingwan was never one to speak without thinking. She must have her reasons for saying that. Jingwan saw Luo Jingming smile at her and felt an inexplicable sense of suffocation in her heart. This cousin of hers actually had a very good personality and treated his younger siblings well. She once heard from third brother that he had secretly helped second cousin with Luo Jingqiang. Now, he was also secretly helping the three younger siblings of the third branch. His own expenses were basically the small portion of the family's allowance and half of it was given out. He actually lived very frugally. Third brother wanted to help him, but he refused every time. He was very clear-minded and would help when he could. He always controlled the extent of his abilities. Luo Romping was such a person. It was worth it to have such a son in this life. However, as father and son, they also proved that feelings were mutual. Actually, did Luo Jingming not know at all what Luo Romping was doing? No, he should more or less know, but he couldn't say anything. To a certain extent, he was actually sandwiched between Luo Peishan and Luo Rongbing. That kind of feeling was probably not good. At this moment, Jingwan hoped that Luo Rongbing was only paralyzed and would not jump around outside. That way, second cousin would feel much more relieved. As long as he was still alive, second cousin would not fall into the pain of losing a loved one. Another imperial physician and their entourage arrived soon after. Jingwan's father, Luo Rongyan, was also with them. After asking, they found out that they had met on the road. Also, the reason why the imperial physician was so late was because the prince's brother-in-law was injured. It wasn't serious, but when the Luo family went to invite the imperial physician, they deliberately delayed the imperial physician. Everything seemed to indicate that they were deliberately doing this. It's Prince Kong again. Madame Luo frowned. Luo Rongyan heard her words that seemed to have a deeper meaning. He also frowned but did not ask anything. Now, he could only wait quietly. Half an hour later, Wang Shi returned. Obviously, what happened to Luo Xiaoba had come to an end. Wang Shi just whispered to Madame Luo. Jingwan naturally would not inquire about Wang Shi's concealment. However, in the Luo family, there was probably no one else but concubine Huan who would have bad intentions towards Luo Xiaoba. Whether today's matter had something to do with her or not, in short, the people around Luo Xiaoba who were bribed by her should have been removed. However, concubine Huan could compete with Madame Lu because she still relied on Luo Rongbing. It didn't make sense for her to let people attack Luo Xiaoba at this juncture. She was still so despicable. Was it her original intention to let Luo Xiaoba get close to her and alienate Madame Lu, and then secretly destroy Luo Xiaoba's body? Maybe she was just bribed by her to make her own decision. After this incident, Madame Lu could be more alert. However, without Luo Rongbing to rely on, it should not be difficult for Madame Lu to deal with concubine Huan, right? The other members of the Luo family came back one after another. Luo Peishan, on the other hand, came back later than usual. When he went to the third branch, there was only old Madame Luo, his other 3 sons, and Luo Jingming. How is the situation? The imperial physician said that his life should be saved, but I'm afraid that he will have to lie in bed for the rest of his life. The exact situation will be seen tomorrow morning. Tonight maybe. I left the 2 imperial physicians in the residence. Luo Peishan nodded and then looked at Luo Jingming. This grandson was too quiet at this time. Go back and rest. Come back tomorrow. Grandfather, okay, there's no need to say anything more. I've already asked someone to apply for leave for you at the Imperial College. Thank you, grandfather. Go back. Yes, I'll take my leave. After Luo Jingming left, Luo Peishan's eldest son, Luo Rongwen, immediately asked, Father, what exactly happened to third brother? That's right, they did not believe that this was really an accident. Luo Peishan glanced at them. There's no value in being alive. There's only value in being dead. There was even a hint of ruthlessness in his words. This meant that Luo Rongbing was still alive and this matter was an accident. Only when he was dead would they investigate to the end. Father, why did this happen? Luo Rongyan frowned in confusion. He despised this third brother of his who was snobbish, but he was still his own brother. Why did he not say anything when an outsider bullied him? Why? Because there's balance. Even His Majesty is happy to see this kind of balance. Prince Kang's family has Jingbu's wife, but because her face was disfigured and she's only Prince Kang's cousin, the value of the marriage alliance weakened. As for Prince Rui, his 4th daughter became his concubine. She's only a concubine after all, so there's only so much value. The imbalance before was because of third brother's involvement. Now that third brother is like this, is it completely balanced? Luo Peishan sneered. I told him long ago not to get involved in this kind of thing, but he insisted on doing it his own way. He's extravagant in his extravagant hopes for riches and honor. He doesn't even know if he has the ability and the fate to do so. Heaven's sins can be forgiven, but the sins brought on by oneself are the hardest to bear. Then, who did it? Luo Rongwei asked. Previously, he stuck with Prince Kong. Later, he wanted to use his daughter to achieve meteoric success with Prince Rui. Who do you think did it? He's a fence-sitter. Does he think that others don't know? Then it's Prince Kong. Luo Rongwei scratched his head. Idiot! Luo Peishan scolded. Chapter 164. It's not wrong to say that Prince Kong did this. After all, when the third son had an accident, there were people from Prince Kang's faction around. Even if it's not him, all the evidence will point to him. So, what he did was not wrong, and whether it was an accident or not, it doesn't matter. In the end, the Luo family is just a chess piece for those people. Luo Peishan said helplessly. In fact, Luo Peishan had another guess in this matter. Since a certain king of hell got involved, he always felt that there was his shadow everywhere. He was like a ghost, lingering and not dispersing. Many things went smoothly, but sometimes he felt even more exhausted. If this continued, he was even worried that he would lose 10 years of his life. He had no one to complain about this kind of anxiety, because as the only person he could talk to, his old wife had long been siding with an outsider. Who let her dear grandchild be her treasure? If the living king of hell could protect her treasure, then it was a good thing. Thinking like this, Luo Peishan unconsciously glanced at his old wife. She lowered her eyebrows and narrowed her eyes to drink tea, as if she didn't hear their conversation at all. Also, in this kind of thing, she always only listened and didn't talk. Concubine Huan, what are you doing here? Mrs. Lu's voice came from behind. Luo Peishan and the others looked at each other. Since they dared to talk about this matter here, naturally, they were not afraid of being heard by the women of the third branch. Or, Luo Peishan was deliberately doing it. Regarding the matter of Luo Jingying, after all, she was Mrs. Lu's daughter. As a mother, it was impossible for her not to know anything about how to arrange her. It just so happened that there were some things to let her know a little more clearly. Let her know that she could only rely on the Luo family now. If she was restless all day long and always thought about some nonsense, then don't blame the Luo family for not tolerating her. But, why did concubine Huan appear again? This was the main room of the third branch. Why was there a concubine here at this time? Come out. Old Madame Luo said lightly. She didn't know that inside, Madame Lu was staring at concubine Huan with a cold smile. After hearing what she shouldn't have heard, she wanted to run away. She didn't even ask if she agreed. This slut had relied on that damn thing's favor to climb over her head time and time again. What was even more hateful was that she had dared to stretch her hand over her son's head. Now that that damn thing couldn't climb up and she had caught such a good opportunity, if she didn't take revenge now, when would she? Concubine Huan's eyes were hazy. Mrs. Lu asked her to bring out the water. She also knew that she couldn't argue with her at this critical juncture. She could only wait for Sanyi to wake up. As long as Sanyi said that he couldn't leave her and wanted her to serve him, she could protect herself. As long as she gave birth to a child, whether it was a boy or a girl, she could think of a way to settle down. With the eldest son of the third branch as an example, she wouldn't stupidly kill herself. It should be possible to let Laoi take care of her. If it was a girl, then they could only blame that they didn't have the fate of mother and daughter. She thought that Mrs. Lu just wanted to take the opportunity to torment her, so she was very obedient. She didn't expect that there was such a big trap waiting for her. She knew that she was not easy to deal with, but she still underestimated her. Mrs. Lu didn't leave just now. Perhaps she knew that Leo was coming, but she didn't know. She could set a trap. It didn't matter if it succeeded or not. But obviously, not only did it succeed, it was also fatal. When they heard old Madame Luo's summons, they tidied up their clothes and came out one after another. Because there were several men, either eunuchs or uncles, with their heads slightly lowered, their eyes fell on the ground. She greeted him politely. "Did you hear what we said before? What do you want to say?" Luo Peishan went straight to the point. Although Mrs. Lu didn't hear as much as concubine Huan, Luo Peishan's last few words were almost enough. Because of Luo Jingying, she had already sobered up a lot. It was simply a dream to try to restore her family. Her mother had died early, and her father had also passed away. Now, her elder brother was in charge of the Lu family, but he was just a loser. Although he had the title of a count, he was idle all day long and didn't work. He didn't have much wealth to begin with, so naturally, he lost it even faster. From time to time, he would come to her place to ask for money. Even if the emperor's grace was vast and mighty, and he was promoted, could he support it? Would the Luo family think highly of him? Would her status in the Luo family be raised because of this? The answer was actually very obvious, no. The Luo family was a scholarly family and a family of etiquette. Her father-in-law and mother-in-law were not snobbish people. When you were down, they would not hit you when you were down, and when you were rich, they would not covet your slightest bit. She should have seen this fact clearly a long time ago, but she was unwilling. But now, what could she do even if she was unwilling? Everything was just a delusion. If she really dared to do anything else and make the Luo family abandon her, she would really have no way to live. She had once threatened Luo Romping by beating the drum. She wasn't tired of living yet. Mrs. Lu directly knelt down. "Father, mother, in the past, this daughter-in-law was insensible and caused you a lot of trouble. In the future, this daughter-in-law will live a good life and raise the children well. I will not ruin the Luo family's reputation." Did she really think it through? It seemed that this person really knew how to reflect on herself in despair. However, Mrs. Lu's words didn't seem to have anything to do with her husband. It could be seen that until now, her heart was still filled with resentment. In fact, from Mrs. Lu's point of view, it was natural for her to feel resentment. Whether you really think so or it's just a temporary measure, this is your last chance. Old Madame Luo said. Mrs. Lu's body trembled slightly, and there was a trace of joy in her heart. Concubine Huan also hurriedly knelt down and expressed her position. "Master, old madam, this concubine is willing to take care of third master for the rest of my life. If something happens to third master, please wait for this concubine to give birth to a child. Then, this concubine is willing to be buried with third master." If Luo Romping heard this, he would probably be very moved. He might even hug each other and have a touching scene of life and death parting. Tears would fall like rain and he would be heartbroken. Unfortunately, the men present were far from being as protective of the fairer sex as Luo Romping. Moreover, their brother's concubine had nothing to do with them, so they wouldn't even look at her. Moreover, that's your man. Isn't it right for you to do that? And for old Madame Luo, concubine Huan's little tricks were simply not enough. She looked at her meaningfully, then looked at Mrs. Lu, who had lowered her eyes. "Third daughter-in-law, she is a member of your third branch. You are the mistress of the third branch. Naturally, you should deal with this matter. However, there are some things that should be left to rot in your stomach. If you say it out loud, it won't be good for anyone." "Yes, this daughter-in-law understands," Mrs. Lu respectfully responded. "In that case, keep an eye on third master tonight. If there's anything, immediately report to us." Luo Peishan gave his final instructions, then got up and left. Old Madame Luo followed closely behind, followed by the other 3 masters. Mrs. Lu stood up and glanced at concubine Huan, who was still kneeling upright. "Someone come." The maidservant guarding outside immediately came in. "Madam. Send someone to concubine Huan's courtyard and bring her daily change of clothes. Concubine Huan will serve 3rd master day and night. In the future, concubine Huan will live in the back room of the main house." In order to protect herself, this bitch would make any choice. Mrs. Lu would naturally fulfill her wish. Serving people had never been an easy job, especially a person who was fine one moment and paralyzed the next. Her temperament would inevitably change greatly. This kind of person would probably only prove that she still existed and was superior to others by torturing others. Who else could be more suitable for this task than concubine Huan? Mrs. Lu bent down slightly and patted concubine Huan's mother. "3rd master likes you so much, and he also trusts you very much. In the future, you must serve him well. Don't let down his feelings for you." "Madam, don't worry. This concubine will definitely serve 3rd master well," concubine Huan said. It was almost impossible to detect any difference from her tone. Mrs. Lu nodded. "That's good." Mrs. Lu was actually looking forward to it. She wanted to see how long this bitch could last. She would not let anyone help her. Eating, drinking, going to the toilet, everything would be taken care of by this bitch. Moreover, Luo Rongping was the 3rd master of the Ministry of Personnel. Even if he was paralyzed, Mrs. Lu could not abuse him. Therefore, once he felt uncomfortable, it must be because this bitch did not serve him well. Hee. When concubine Huan heard Mrs. Lu's laughter, she could not help but feel a chill in her heart. An eyesore of a concubine, without a man to rely on, she could only be kneaded and squashed by the mistress. She could not resist. Don't say that there were so many people around her before. When she worked for her, those people were the best at taking advantage of the situation. Moreover, she belonged to a lowly concubine. To put it bluntly, she was the property of the master and mistress. Now that the master was gone, she was firmly controlled by the mistress. Didn't she hear Mrs. Lu say that she would only pack a few clothes for her? In other words, everything else no longer belonged to her. "You can get close to my son under my nose and bribe the people around him. Originally, I thought that you were capable. However, I have been waiting for you to do something stupid. But, in fact, you don't have that ability. You schemed against the 3rd young lady and then framed me. You have always wanted to do this, right? It's a pity that you can't even get close to that girl. In this backyard, it's possible for me to scheme against anyone. There are only 2 people that I won't directly reach out to. One is the old madam, and the other is our 3rd young lady. Touching the 3rd young lady's hair is more serious than scratching the old madam's body. In the whole mansion, only my stupid daughter insisted on going up to find trouble. I have already told her not to directly confront her. However, she is also a young lady in the mansion. The old madam only punished her. If it were you or me, the old madam will definitely skin us alive. Do you believe it or not?" The more Mrs. Lu said, the more she felt that it was reasonable. Before, she realized that she could not directly attack that girl, Luo Jingwan, but she had never been so clear-headed. She also had to bear a large part of the responsibility for her daughter's current situation. Once she started to be clear-headed, she would be completely clear-headed. But now, she could not take care of her daughter. Chapter 165. What would happen to concubine Huan in the future could almost be predicted. She probably never thought of such an ending, right? She touched her belly that was already more than 4 months pregnant. This might be her last hope, but at this moment, she still couldn't help but feel panic in her heart. The old madam had handed her over to Mrs. Lu to deal with. She had no power, and no one. In the future, she was afraid that she would be completely trapped in the house. Only in this way could she ensure that she would keep her mouth shut. Whether this child could be born or not, it was all up to Mrs. Lu. She had long heard that the old madam didn't like concubines. The concubines of each branch basically didn't have a chance to show their faces in front of her. This time, she really experienced it unforgettable. Not to mention, some concubines flattered the old madam and then suppressed the mistress. In the Luo family's backyard, it was simply a dream. Even if the old madam didn't like her daughter-in-law, it was absolutely not their turn to step on the legal wife and mistress. In this regard, old Madame Luo was definitely the best mother-in-law. Mrs. Lu seemed to have seen through her thoughts. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. After all, without you, what should you do? I don't know if he thinks so, but you must have thought so before. Naturally, I will fulfill your infatuation. I won't touch the piece of meat in your belly, but I don't think you will like others to serve him. You have to take care of him and the child. Mrs. Lu sighed with pity, so, you must take good care of yourself. Concubine Huan's heart was even colder. This was Mrs. Lu's real purpose. At this moment, Concubine Huan even had the idea of letting Luo Romping die quickly. But she couldn't. If he died, she would probably be buried with him. Although her birth had eliminated the possibility of her being the legal wife, she thought that with her talent, beauty, and skills, it was easy to firmly control a man's heart. Even if she wasn't the legal wife, she could still get whatever she wanted. No one dared to look down on her. Before today, she also thought that she was living such a life, but it turned out that it wasn't. No matter how fiercely she fought with Mrs. Lu, in fact, the Luo family didn't take her seriously. If they really wanted to deal with her, the man she relied on would absolutely not be able to stop them. Before, it was Mrs. Lu who made the old madam unhappy and didn't want to help her. Did she hate her? Of course, she hated her. But who should she hate? The old madam. Mrs. Lu. Her man. Or should he blame the heavens for being unfair? Madame Lu took one last look at Concubine Huan, who was pretending to be calm on the surface, but in fact, her heart was close to collapse. Madame Lu also felt that she was so stupid in the past. She clearly had a mother-in-law who stood on the side of her daughter-in-law in this aspect, but she had to court death and make her unhappy. Otherwise, no matter how Luo Romping was, there would never be so many foxes in this backyard. She glanced at the bedroom behind her and saw the man lying unconscious on the bed through the wall. Even if he wasn't dead, he wouldn't be able to get up. This source of trouble had been completely cut off. In the future, she wouldn't have to be so tired anymore. After the initial pleasure, her heart calmed down again. Luo Peishan and old Madame Luo, as well as their sons, each went to their own place to think. Whether it was a good night's sleep or a sleepless night's sleep, they didn't mention it for the time being. After Qin Tianming went to the Yamen, he had already gone to the gate of Jin Qin Wang's mansion to ask for forgiveness. In the end, he was a first-rank military governor. Li Hongyuan didn't do anything to him. He just let him kneel for 2 hours. There were few people coming and going in front of the gate of Jin Qin Wang's mansion, but it wasn't that there weren't any. Therefore, Qin Tianming's matter was estimated to be known by everyone. However, Qin Tianming was a miserable person. This apology was just for outsiders to see. The real apology would be at night. Li Hongyuan didn't say much. He just pulled him to the martial arts field and the two of them practiced. In terms of martial arts, there was probably no one who could win against Li Hongyuan in a one-on-one fight. He was a battlefield. He had been baptized by blood for a few years. If one wanted to fight with him, one would only die faster. Therefore, the result of the practice was that Qin Tianming was beaten down again and again. His whole body was covered with invisible scars. However, there were no injuries to his muscles or bones. It wouldn't affect his daily life. But at this moment, it was very painful, very painful. When Qin Tianming curled up on the ground and couldn't get up again, Li Hongyuan stopped and squatted down. Do you know your mistake? Master, this subordinate knows his mistake. The way he addressed him was his good attitude at this time. What did you do wrong? You didn't teach your daughter well. You didn't teach your son well. Qin Tianming, 3rd Miss Luo is your future mistress. The only one. She and I are one. We will live and die together. Li Hongyuan's tone wasn't heavy, but the weight of his words set off huge waves in Qin Tianming's heart. Right now, he only felt that his master was really benevolent. His daughter had been so offended, but she didn't lose a single hair. As for the rest of them, they were only injured. They weren't crippled or killed. This wasn't a great kindness. Master, don't worry. This matter will not happen again. Otherwise, this subordinate will personally end that evil girl. You don't need me to teach you what to do with your son-in-law, do you? Master, please don't worry. Okay, get out. Li Hongyuan got up and left unhurriedly. His figure soon disappeared into the darkness. After a while, Qin Tianming slowly got up. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain. Li Hongyuan returned to the study. How is Luo romping? Master, 20% is dead, 80% is paralyzed. Li Hongyuan didn't ask again. Starting tomorrow, send some seasonal fruits to Wan every day. Master, don't worry. This servant will remember. As for the Luo family, there was no bad news from the 3rd branch tonight. It could be considered a blessing in the misfortune. There was no morning court today, so the morning roll call at the Yamen could be slightly delayed. Luo Peishan went to the 3rd branch to see Luo romping. From the imperial physician who came to check on the situation from time to time all night, he learned that his 3rd son's life was saved. Luo Peishan breathed a sigh of relief. Although this bastard was disobedient and stubborn, he thought that he deserved it. Although he looked incomparably cold on the surface, his heart was still somewhat soft-hearted. Now that things were like this, no one would dislike him and want to punish him or even kill him as an example to others. The Luo family would also not be implicated by him. When Jingwan paid her respects to old Madame Luo, she heard the exact news. In fact, everyone, including the others, had the same thoughts as Luo Peishan. Of course, in fact, most people didn't know the specific situation and only thought that Luo romping had an accident. Although this matter could only be treated as an accident because Luo romping was still alive, it didn't mean that Luo Peishan's expression was good. It was unknown whether other people knew about this matter, but almost all the people in the Ministry of Personnel knew. When they saw Luo Peishan's gloomy face, they didn't dare to breathe loudly. When they saw him, they hurriedly left after greeting him. As for those who saw him from afar, they directly took a detour, afraid that they would bump into him. This selflessness and iron blood were equally famous. If he caught a person's weakness, even if they didn't die, they would be skinned alive. Prince Rui originally wanted to take this opportunity to comfort Luo Peishan. However, he thought that this old fox would not be so easily deceived. Perhaps he had already suspected him at this time. It was time to go up. If things went wrong, he might think that he was showing off. His previous efforts had failed to soften his attitude, and now it might backfire. Therefore, after a slight hesitation, Prince Rui chose to leave. He didn't know that after he turned around, Luo Peishan's piercing gaze was full of coldness. On the surface, it was indeed treated as an accident, but it didn't mean that he really didn't care at all. That was his son. Even if he was in the wrong, could this group of people wantonly decide his life and death? Before this, it was impossible for him to work for him. After touching his son, they still continued to have such thoughts. Did they really think that he, Luo Peishan, was made of clay? Not long after, Luchengdi summoned him. Luo Peishan tidied his clothes and entered the palace with a solemn expression. Luchengdi said that he had also just heard the unfortunate news and was grieving. "How is your son?" he asked with concern. "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. My son's life is not in danger. It's just that." Luo Peishan's indifferent face flashed with a touch of sorrow. "It's just that I'm afraid that in the future, he will be entangled in bed and won't be able to get up again." Luchengdi sighed. Luo Peishan, even if he didn't smile normally, was full of a scholarly aura and didn't make people feel that he was cold. However, today, he was emitting an aura of "strangers don't come near." It could be seen that perhaps he was really in extreme pain. "However, beloved official Luo, how did your son get into this accident? Have you investigated clearly? I'm also confused about this matter. If someone did something, just tell me. I will definitely seek justice for you." "Why do you say that, Your Majesty?" Luo Peishan was slightly puzzled. "My son was an accident. Speaking of it, it's also his fate. If he really wanted to seek justice for him, he should directly hand this matter over to the Supreme Court for a thorough investigation." It could be seen that this matter was really what the emperor in front of him wanted to see. However, there was no other way. He was the emperor and he was the subject. As the saying goes, if the emperor wants the subject to die, the subject has to die. It was easy to deal with other people, but the emperor couldn't find a way to settle accounts with him. Moreover, he wasn't the real culprit. He didn't even add fuel to the fire. He just didn't do anything after knowing that the matter wasn't simple and then hoped that some people would keep quiet. Luchengdi was very satisfied with Luo Peishan's tactfulness. He let people reward Luo Rongping with a lot of good medicinal materials and specially allowed the imperial physician to stay in the Luo family for a few more days. On the surface, this matter was covered up like this. Of course, it was only on the surface. At least, Prince Kong was now in a terrible fix. First, he was scolded by the Empress. Although she didn't use a dirty word, her words were all saying that he was an idiot, and a failure. Prince Kong was so angry that his veins were bulging, but he still didn't dare to lose his temper at the Empress. He just explained that he didn't do it. As a result, he was scolded even more miserably by the Empress. If he did it and was caught, at least he was worthy of the name. If he didn't do it and was framed, that was more incompetent and sullen. Speaking of which, Prince Kang's temper was so bad at other times because he was too sullen in front of the Empress. He was bound to get to the bottom of this matter. In addition to wanting to prove himself, he didn't want to take the blame for his sworn enemy. Luo Rongping's fence-sitter behavior naturally angered him. Even if he pushed all the blame to Prince Rui and expressed his loyalty to Prince Kong didn't believe him at all. Thus, he wanted to teach him a lesson and punish him as an example to others. He originally planned to make him fall off his horse, but the key point was that he still let people take action. Then, he gathered the relevant people together for a trial. However, the results made him break out in a cold sweat. These people told him with certainty that they did it because they were instructed by him. But they didn't have any evidence. After all, who would leave evidence for such a sinister thing? Jia Yan received the news from him the night before. Because it was consistent with his previous hints, and the number of people they met was also correct, other than Prince Kong and his confidants, no one else should know about it. Thus, he didn't have any suspicions. Then, he stalled for time and aggravated Luo Rongping's injury. This was also part of the plan. In this case, how could Prince Kong not feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave? This framing was very thorough, and it also indirectly proved that there was really a big problem around him. Otherwise, how could the enemy carry out his plan so easily without suspicion? In a flash, Prince Kong became a bird startled by the twang of a bow. It seemed that everyone was suspicious, so he became more and more irritable. Originally, when he learned that Luo Peishan treated it as an accident and didn't want to investigate further, as the people involved, they should more or less visit him to express their sincerity. After all, they went back home after the incident, which was very immoral. However, Prince Kong didn't know what was wrong with him. Not only did he not agree to this, but he also brought the matter to Lu Qingdi and asked Lu Qingdi to prove his innocence. In the court, all the civil and military officials were present. Lu Qingdi hinted that this matter was an accident and stopped here, but Prince Kong didn't seem to understand and told him that he was wronged in a tearful voice. Lu Qingdi was so angry that he wanted to strangle him to death. Well, he had proven his innocence, which confirmed that Luo Rongbing was framed by someone and not an accident. No matter who the culprit was, as the executor, none of the people involved in this matter could escape. Those people were all Prince Kang's people, more or less related to him, and some were even his brothers-in-law. Now, all because of him, they were sent to prison and were trapped like this by the master they were loyal to. He reckoned that Prince Kong would be so angry that he would vomit blood. As for the others, they were afraid that they would have a cold new life. What kind of future would they have if they followed such a person? Even if they risked their lives for him, who knew when he would sell them out? His heart wavered, so he naturally thought about whether he should choose another master. Prince Rui and the others looked at him with vigor. This kind of person, perhaps he didn't need to do anything to be finished. In fact, Prince Rui was still considering whether to let Luo Jingying go home to visit family, but in the end, she was only a concubine. Her status was too low. It should be known that even ordinary concubines didn't have the qualifications to go home to visit family. If a concubine was allowed to go home to visit family, it would definitely be a great honor. Only her man would spoil her to the heavens. However, a mere concubine was too much of an honor. If he dared to set this precedent, he was afraid that the imperial censor's saliva would drown him. After thinking about it, he could only give up. Perhaps he could send a steward to visit the Luo family in the name of Luo Jingying. In the end, Prince Kong only knew that his imperial father believed him and that he didn't do it. As a result, Prince Kong felt refreshed, as if he didn't realize the seriousness of this matter at all. After the morning court, Lu Qingdi flew into a rage and almost overturned the imperial table. He kept calling Prince Kong a fool. Prince Kang's behavior was not only pushing his own people out, but also slapping his father's face. Lu Qingdi, the emperor, regarded it as an accident, but his son unceremoniously tore down his father's face. Sun Yilin was next to him. He lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes, looking more and more cold. He had already seen through it. No matter how ambitious his Aunt Empress was, there was no hope for her to realize it in this life. This drag was so strong that others couldn't pull her back even if they worked together. Duke Dinggua's mansion was also in a mess. His strong rise had suppressed his elder brother's development, but there was no other way. He was not only fighting for himself, but more importantly, for the future of Duke Dinggua's mansion and even the Sun family. If he did not do something, he was worried that Duke Dinggua's mansion and the Sun family would be completely destroyed by a certain king of hell. He had lost his beloved woman and had to bear the fate of his family alone. From time to time, he had to face the intimacy of the Empress. Sun Yilin felt very tired many times. Every time this happened, he would sit in the flowers for half a day, alone and quiet, not wanting to be disturbed by anyone. Prince Kong was called by the Empress again and pointed out the interests to him. But Prince Kong didn't care. There were so many people who were loyal to him, and it didn't matter if there were a few fewer. He was the eldest son of the legal wife, and no one was qualified to compete with him. The Empress waved her hand and let him leave. She didn't even bother to give him a sentimental, idiot look. At this moment, the Empress was really thinking about supporting another prince, a prince who would listen to her 100%. But it was a little difficult to choose. It was not suitable for someone too young. The fight for the throne was almost white-hot. By the time the younger one grew up, it would be too late. But there was no one who was qualified for this fight that she could firmly control in her hands. Now she was a little regretful. Why didn't she adopt a prince in the early years to prepare for a rainy day? Her son was actually quite smart when he was young. Even a few years ago, he seemed to be good. Why did he become more and more disabled after experiencing so many things? The Empress rubbed her swollen and painful temples. It was really not easy to change the person now. Perhaps she should prepare for both sides. Previously, she thought that it would be enough to find him an obedient stepwife. Now it seemed that this was not appropriate. There needed to be someone who was close, opinionated, and knew how to talk to him from time to time. It seemed that the Luo family's third young lady was indeed a very suitable candidate. Unfortunately, if she had known this would happen, she would have made a prompt decision to fight with the emperor. Even if she let Luo Peishan continue to be the Minister of Rights, and even if she gave Yilin some compensation, she was now the fiancée of Li Hongyuan. It was not a wise decision to fight with him. However, perhaps she could make a fuss about him, bringing bad luck to his wife. There were too many examples before. But now the Emperor and Lady Su were watching the Luo family's third young lady closely. It was not so easy to make a move. Empress Sun narrowed her eyes and thought quietly. At the same time, she was calculating in her heart. If this matter did not succeed, who else would be suitable? In her heart, she searched through all the unmarried young ladies in the capital. As for whether Jingwan would have any thoughts in the future, it was not within the scope of her consideration. After a woman got married, her heart would naturally be loyal to her man. The Empress did not think about whether she herself was loyal to Lu Qingdi. As the victim, Luo Rongping of the Luo family naturally knew about this matter at the back of the Luo family. It was Luo Peishan who sent people. Jingwan and Sun Yijia were eating fruits. A certain king of hell sent people to deliver fruits. Since a long time ago, there was an endless stream of fruits every day. Some fruits that were easier to store and transport were naturally sent more, while others were less. Especially when Sun Yijia saw it, she was very surprised. In the past few years, even in the palace, it was extremely rare. This also confirmed what Li Hongyuan had said. Jingwan was silent, and then she decisively hid the fruits. If there was more, she would share some. If there was less, except for a little bit sent to old Madame Luo, she kept all the rest. Her mother did not even have any. There was no way, her mother could not hide it. Doing this was just to avoid attracting trouble. After all, the palace did not have it, but you ate it every day. What was going on? Even if Jin Qinhuang did not care about people knowing that he brought these things back, the palace was not willing to give them. Wasn't that unfilial? As the beneficiary of the benefits, Jingwan naturally had to help cover it up. Therefore, the Luo family only knew that Jin Qinhuang sent a lot of fruits to Jingwan. Only a few people knew what exactly it was. Sun Yijia couldn't help but tease Jingwan. Sure enough, she was different. Even that king of hell, who had seen countless beauties, was so attentive. She had never heard of any of the previous fiancés receiving this kind of treatment. Eating can't even block your mouth. Jingwan gave her a sidelong glance. Sun Yijia quickly shut her mouth. Because she heard Jingwan say that eating more fruits was good for the baby, other than those that were easy to get heaty, she ate a lot. However, for those that were smaller in amount, even if she was hungry, she only ate a little. If she really listened to Wan Mimi and ate all of it, other than the people serving Wan Mimi would be unhappy, the old madam would definitely have thoughts. More importantly, if that king of hell knew, he might skin her alive. She herself was also very strange. Before she found out that she was pregnant, her appetite was bad. After she found out, her appetite gradually became better. Although she would still feel nauseous when she smelled some special smells. Those before, it was probably the wrong time. And sister-in-law, you are a special case. Sun Yijia was surprised at first, then she understood what Jingwan was saying, who knows. After all, Jin Qinwang had his first fiancée at the age of 16. It has been 6 years since then, who would pay attention to those things? I am a special case, this point is not false. I am definitely the one that he dislikes the most. Regarding this point, Sun Yijia did not particularly care. Who wanted to be liked by that king of hell? If he really cared about Wan Mimi and treated Wan Mimi better, perhaps Sun Yijia's opinion of him would be less. That's right, sister-in-law, you should have a mama by your side who specializes in this aspect. Jingwan pointed at Sun Yijia's stomach, but your side seems to be. For a noble lady like her, it was basically standard to have someone like Gong Mama. Even if she did not burn, she would not make a mistake like eating a bad stomach. Sun Yijia paused, then said without care, last year in December, she was driven away by my mother. She had a daughter who wanted to climb into my fifth brother's bed. Fifth brother was very angry, so their whole family was angered by my mother. Jingwan laughed, it's not that I want to say this, but your mother values your fifth brother too much. In the future, she will definitely be incompatible with your fifth sister-in-law. Right now, I'm very glad that I broke off the engagement with your fifth brother, really. Sun Yijia saw that she did not avoid this matter at all. It could be seen that she really did not care. She could not help but sigh for her fifth brother in her heart. What incompatible fire and water, the premise was that there must be such a person. But looking at her fifth brother's state, in the short term, it was very difficult. She was even worried that her fifth brother would not be able to walk out of it in this lifetime. That's right, it's good to break it off. Is it better than marrying into Jin Qinwang Fu? Jingwan teased. Maybe. According to Jin Qinwang's current attitude, he should not be too cold to you. After you marry, there will be no one above you to suppress you. Even if there are secondary concubines, they will not be able to surpass you. If you want to deal with them, there are many ways. But if you suppress a difficult mother-in-law, you will only be sullen. Sun Yijia lightly said. Therefore, the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in this ancient era was perhaps even more blood-vomiting than the relationship between the legal wife and the concubine. Not to mention that it was like her previous life, where one wrong move and the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law would fight. Many times, the daughter-in-law would suppress the mother-in-law. Try it here, as a daughter-in-law, if she dared to talk back to the mother-in-law, it would probably cause the sky to fall and the earth to sink. How is your mother? It's just like that. In any case, her actions are not very nimble. All day long, she is making a fuss about fifth brother marrying a wife. Many of uncles and aunts' families' female cousins have been called over to Dingwu Gongfu. You must know, in the past, my mother simply did not like them. You say, how ironic. As for other things, fifth brother will probably let her do as she pleases. Only when it comes to marrying a wife, I estimate that 3 to 5 years is short. There's nothing wrong with being late. Just like in her previous life, it was normal for men to marry in their 30s. And now is indeed not the right time. Young lady, third young madam, old madam has sent someone over. A servant girl came to report. However, what was more surprising was that the person sent by old Madame Luo was Luo Peishan's personal manservant. Jingwan's heart slightly moved, is there any new change in third uncle's matter? Thus, that manservant repeated what he had just told old Madame Luo to Jingwan and Sun Yijia. After Jingwan finished listening, she gave a reward and sent that manservant away. She was silent for a moment. Sister-in-law, this cousin of yours is actually an expert in placing righteousness before family. There was simply a hole in his brain. There was a saying, do not fear a godlike opponent, but fear a pig-like teammate. And Prince Kong, as the core figure of the faction, was so deceptive. Even a godlike person could be deceived to death by him. If it happened 2 more times, she was afraid that even the most loyal hardcore would abandon him. What's the point of fighting for the throne? He should just wash his neck clean and wait to be slaughtered. Sun Yijia was speechless for a long time. He really wasn't this stupid before. Pausing, she seemed to have thought of something. Actually, cousin-in-law is a very smart woman. She is wholeheartedly devoted to Prince Kong. Cousin-in-law is seriously ill. It's not that she didn't work too hard. When you get married in the future, I will properly thank Jean Prince. Jingwan understood in a second, because he messed up your marriage with Jean Prince. Actually, listening to how she addressed Prince Kong and Prince Kong Qin Wang Fei, one could know how she felt about these 2 people. Sun Yijia nonchalantly made an N sound. If he can treat you well, I will be even more grateful to him. It wouldn't be a problem to set up a long life memorial tablet for him. What nonsense are you saying? Jingwan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As a result, Sun Yijia looked at her very seriously. She really wasn't lying. Jingwan was a little helpless, but her heart was warm and very comfortable. That's right, Wan Mimi, do you know about Wan Fangfei's situation? Why are you mentioning her for no reason? Jingwan was very displeased with this person. Such an obvious dislike. If there was no problem, then it would be fake. Who let my Nyang always tell me to learn more from her? Seeing her also suffer in the hands of Jean Prince, I was happy. So, if I could hear news of her misfortune, would be even happier. You're not this kind of person, so you don't have to discredit yourself like this. Ask Mama, she should know. Usually, she's the one who tells me these things. At this time, Gong Mama wasn't present. Third young mistress, Nubi also knows about this. Nubi will tell you. As Jingwan's maidservants, they definitely had a common enemy with their mistress. Even if they didn't know the reason why Jingwan hated Wan Fangfei, they were still their common enemy. So, if Wan Fangfei was not good, they would be happy. So, if she wasn't good, they definitely had to pay attention to it. Jingwan looked at the Qing Ju, who was full of gossipy spirit, and thought it was funny, but she didn't stop her. Because of Sun Yijia's personality, there weren't any lively maidservants by her side. Even when she was young, the little maidservants who served her were trained to be well-behaved, as if they were carved from the same mold. According to her mother's words, being too lively would lead her astray. When she first found out about the Qing Ju's nature, she was actually quite surprised. After interacting with her a few more times, she found that this kind of personality wasn't bad. Okay, you say it. If you say it well, you'll be rewarded. Qing Ju giggled and agreed. Then, she began to narrate the story vividly. It must be said that these past few days, the outside world was abuzz with rumors. First, it was Jean Prince causing a ruckus in the Gong Prince Fu, then it was Luo Romping falling off a horse. Of course, because the latter involved a factional struggle, very few people talked about it openly. However, it spread throughout the entire imperial city. Whether it was in the backyard of a large family or in the marketplace, the topic of conversation was Ruan Fangfei. Compared to Sun Yijia's disfigurement, it was more than 10 times more serious. Therefore, the rumors were all centered around Jean Prince's words. Something about her face being disfigured like a yiksha, suffering from a chronic disease, or that she was actually a stone woman, or even that she wasn't a virgin for a long time. All kinds of malicious guesses were piled on her, with no limit to exaggeration. One person spread it to 10, and 10 people spread it to 100. The initial guesses later became the truth. There were even people who came forward and patted their chest to guarantee that everything was true. And the people who heard it, no matter how outrageous, spread it out again. If Ruan Fangfei dared to appear now, perhaps there wouldn't be a single person within 100 zhang radius. How high she was once praised, how miserably she fell now. Don't talk about Ruan Fangfei, even the other members of the Ruan family don't dare to go out. It's estimated that other than the Grand Secretary, no one in the Ruan family has not been affected. Even those servants who came out to buy things, if they weren't treated differently, they would be asked if the masters of the Ruan family were really like the rumors. At the beginning, whether it was the masters or the servants of the Ruan family, there was no shortage of fights outside. It seems that after the Grand Secretary spoke, the situation calmed down a little. However, those rumors have become more and more intense, especially those young ladies who are close to her. This servant estimates that in order to distance themselves from her, those people will most likely alienate her. It's that serious. Jingwan was very surprised. It shouldn't be. It's reasonable to say that the original source was Jin Prince, and it was in the Gong Prince Fu, so it shouldn't be this outrageous. At most, it should be in the backyard of a large family. Sun Yijia felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Perhaps someone deliberately fanned the flames and did it on purpose. Jingwan's gaze flashed. She inexplicably thought of that man. It's reasonable to say that he wasn't the kind of person who would do this kind of thing, but on that day, it was indeed him who said those words. It doesn't matter if it is or not, in any case, my mood right now is very good. Who told her to do some bad things to Wan Mimi first? Public opinion can melt gold, accumulation can destroy bones. This wasn't something to joke about. If the person involved didn't care, the damage might not be too big, but how many people could truly not care? Not to mention the current situation where reputation was greater than the sky, even in Jingwan's previous life, rumors and slanders could drive people to death. In her previous life, transportation was developed and it was convenient to travel. If one couldn't stay in one place, they could easily change places. But here, it wasn't so easy. Thinking of the things that Ruan Fangfei did to her, Jingwan couldn't sympathize at all. However, Jingwan felt that that kind of abnormal species, her ability to withstand pressure wasn't ordinary. She couldn't possibly be unable to recover from this setback. So much so that when she appeared again, she might become even crazier and harder to deal with. She had to thoroughly beat her into the dust and lose her freedom. She had to struggle in despair, and after struggling, she would find even more despair. Only in this way could she vent her hatred. Wan Mimi, in this way, is it possible for her marriage with Jin Qinhuang to be cancelled? Jingwan stared blankly. If her guess wasn't wrong, if she really liked Jin Qinhuang, the cancellation of the marriage, for her, would probably be one disaster after another. I don't know. Although her reputation is bad, but in the end, it's His Majesty's decree. Wan Mimi, you say, if the marriage is really cancelled, would it be counted as Jin Qinhuang bringing misfortune to his wife? No matter, a Ce Fei is just a concubine. It should be that Jin Qinhuang's fate of bringing misfortune to his wife has expanded. Sun Yijia rejoiced in other people's misfortune, but she didn't know whether it was Jin Qinhuang, or Ruan Fangfei, or both. Jingwan rolled her eyes at her. What about me? Is sister-in-law cursing me? How can you be the same as them? You are great Master Liao Chen's 8 characters, a match made in heaven. It shows that he can't bring misfortune to you. It's best if he brings misfortune to all the women close to him except for you. Then, he can only have you. And, Sun Yijia felt that her idea was very wonderful. Then, one Mimi could also be a pair for a lifetime. Chapter 166. Motherfucker, who is this silly white sweet? Please return the flower of old age. It was said that pregnancy makes one stupid for 3 years. This child had only been born for a short period of time and she already became stupid. Hurry and wake up, don't dream ah. Sunny Jia curled her lips. She also knew that she was indulging in fantasy. He kept a courtyard full of beauties, weren't they all fine and dandy? For Jean Qin Wang to jinx his wife to that extent, it was already very strange. If he really jinxed all the women close to him, then no one would dare to get close to him. She reckoned that even the emperor would suspect that there was a problem with his son. Don't talk about this anymore, it's so boring. Sunny Jia continued to eat. The weather is getting hotter. According to the usual practice, starting next month, the emperor will go to Qingde Palace to avoid the summer heat. Grandfather will definitely be named by the emperor to accompany him. Grandmother will most likely also follow, so you can't run away. I don't know if I should go or not. Of course I should go ah. I heard that pregnancy is very difficult. Naturally, I should do whatever is comfortable. The palace is only so big. It's all for the emperor's concubines and the princes to live in. The other courtyards of the court officials are all built around the palace. The place is naturally much smaller than the residences in the capital. If more people go, I reckon that they won't be able to live in it. Moreover, the other courtyards of each family are close to each other. When you go out, you can see each other. This will cause more troubles. Sunny Jia spoke from experience. In the past, when she wasn't married, she didn't have the patience to deal with them. Now that she was married, she would definitely be in contact with those who were also married. Those who were the same age as her, as well as those who were older by a few years. There were many old acquaintances, so it would definitely be noisy. Jingwan thought about it. It was indeed so. The closer they lived, the more lively it would be. The women in the inner courtyards of large families were originally bored to the extreme. Even if there was nothing, they would still be able to stir up some trouble. The same thing, their mouths would open and close, they would be able to talk about good and bad things. There's me accompanying you. Right now, I'm the same as Jean Qin Wang, belonging to Gui Jianchou. No one can provoke me. For the past 2 days, the Gong prince hadn't been able to get a good look from his father-in-law, so he was forced to suffer. Because there were other things pressing down on him, he didn't make the headlines. However, Luo Peishan told old Madame Luo about it, and old Madame Luo told Jingwan about it, so Jingwan knew about it clearly. In the end, the reason was Princess Consort Gong, but the root cause was Jingwan. When Jean Qin Wang went to find the Gong prince, he didn't obediently drink the wine, and even said something that shouldn't have been said. Naturally, the Gong princess consort's maternal family and his in-laws took the blame. The left governor's 3 sons were kicked and injured, and he himself knelt in front of Jean Qin Wang Fu for an hour. This kind of thing had never happened to Lu Qingdi before, so it could be considered a loss of face. The main culprit was his own daughter, so the left governor at most let his wife say a few words. The Gong prince, who didn't handle this matter well, naturally became the left governor's punching bag. But he was a prince, a Duke of Qin. No matter what, the left governor was only a subject, he couldn't do anything substantial, so he just gave a cold face and gave a cold war. Due to his status, the Gong prince's words and actions would definitely not be subservient. The more the left governor scrupulously abided by his duties as a subject, the further the distance between them got. But he was the person that the Gong prince relied on the most, so he vomited to death, and hated him to death. The so-called clay figurines still had 3 points of temper. Usually, the Gong princess consort was fine and indulgent, but now her father was giving her such a hard time, so naturally he took his anger out on her. Almost every day, the Gong princess consort was unreasonable, as usual, laying her hands on those beauties, but for the first time, she was reprimanded by the Gong prince, vixen, jealous, losing face for him. At that moment, the Gong princess consort felt that it was inconceivable. She quarreled with the Gong prince, but in the end, with a slap, she completely stopped. It was as if the sky had collapsed and the earth had sunk. The Gong princess consort cried as she returned to the champion Marquis Fu. Although her grandfather was the champion marquis, her father held the right to speak. Her mother felt sorry for her, but Qin Tianming was a military general, he wouldn't fall for her crying, throwing a tantrum, and threatening to hang herself. So what if she was the Gong princess consort? In his territory, she was only his daughter. Even if she turned into a dragon, she had to coil up, even if she turned into a tiger, she had to lie down. As a result, the Gong princess consort, who had been arrogant for several years, suffered 2 heavy blows on the same day. In an instant, she was like a flower in full bloom that lost its moisture, wilting. In the end, she was the Gong princess consort, different from the average daughter-in-law. She couldn't stay in her maternal home for too long. Even if she stayed for a night, she was afraid that the next day, she would be reprimanded by the empress. Therefore, the Gong princess consort's honor guard came in the same way, and she returned. Whether it was a respectful welcome or a respectful farewell, the champion Marquis Fu's etiquette was complete. However, the Gong princess consort on the carriage didn't have the slightest sense of superiority. Because she had personally experienced that all of her honor and glory really originated from her father. She had always denied this point, thinking that others were jealous that she was able to obtain all of her husband's favor. Even without her father, her husband would still treat her the same. This time, she had truly awakened from her beautiful dream. The feeling of falling from the clouds to the dust was always the ultimate pain. Was it hate? Definitely, but she didn't dare to retaliate against Jingwan. It was only because of the words that she, Qin Tianming, had said to her. If he angered the living king of hell, he could really do anything. If he killed her old man in a fit of anger, even if it was a felony to kill a first-rank official for no reason, could the emperor kill his own son to make up for the official's life? At most, it would only be a demotion. According to the emperor's favor towards Jin Qinhuang, it might only be a small punishment, but her old man's life would truly be gone. Without the left governor, the champion Marquis Fu could only wait to be divided up. She didn't have her father, so she could only wait to be given the cold shoulder, or even be removed from the court. Therefore, she, Tang's Qinhuang Fei, couldn't do anything to a female official, so she felt vexed and aggrieved. Not only that, no matter how much the Gong Qinhuang Fei pretended, it was not as glorious as before. Naturally, she would be ridiculed and squeezed out by her sisters-in-law. There was nothing more vexing than this. Luo Jingwan was a god of plague. If she couldn't provoke him, then she could only hide. What Jingwan knew, Sun Yijia naturally also knew. She looked at her with a smile that wasn't a smile, looking at Wan Mimi's meaning. It seems that you are quite honored. That's right. Jingwan nodded in agreement. Your skin is getting thicker as you age. If being thick-skinned can prevent yourself from getting hurt, then being thicker is also okay. Just like Jin Qinhuang Li Hongyuan, if his skin wasn't thick, would he start eating meat while hugging his fiancée? Definitely not. Alright, Sun Yijia was defeated by Jingwan's reasoning, but please, that was for outsiders, okay? Alright, Gue Jiancho, can you still accompany me all the time? You used to be grandmother's intimate little cotton-padded jacket. If you spend all the time on me, grandmother will definitely be jealous. Then wouldn't my sin be big? Then it's even simpler. Without me, isn't there still my Sanji? Your Sanji is a big man, it's even more impossible for him to revolve around me. How would that look? You don't need to accompany me all the time, you only need to appear at the right time. Then the effect of abusing dogs will be good. Sun Yijia was a bit confused. She could understand every word that Wan Mimi said, but she didn't understand when they were put together. Abusing dogs. What did it have to do with dogs? Jingwan didn't need to look to know what Sun Yijia was thinking. This wasn't a generation gap, but a generation gap separated by time and space. Thinking about it, sometimes it seemed quite lonely. Alright, Jingwan was a little sad. She slowly peeled the lychee shell. It was more interesting to eat these things by herself. In her own territory, she didn't need to care about her appearance. Well, to put it bluntly, it's just showing off. It's boring to show off clothes and jewelry. If you want to show off your husband. Words don't count. You have to let others see that your husband is not pretentious and not hypocritical. You have to show them that your husband truly cares about you. Only then will people be envious and jealous. No matter how much jealousy others have and say, you will only feel more comfortable. Yes, that was it. Among those noble people, no matter how good something was, it couldn't compare to a good husband. Sun Yijia understood what Jingwan meant. Wan Mimi was indeed full of bad ideas, but she also liked it very much. As for abusing dogs, she roughly understood. But wasn't it bad to compare those people to dogs? Forget it, anyway, outsiders couldn't hear it. If Wan Mimi said that they were dogs, then they were dogs. Young lady, second young lady and young master are here. Oh. Second older sister has come back from worshipping the ancestors? On the day Luo Rongping was injured, she sent a letter to Luo Jingqiang. However, it was said that the husband and wife had returned to the old residence to worship the ancestors. Fortunately, it wasn't too far away. A round trip would only take a few days. In addition, Luo Rongping's specific condition was not confirmed, so she didn't anxiously send someone to send a letter to ask her to hurry back. However, her sister was here. Why did she bring her husband? Wasn't second older cousin at home? Let second brother-in-law go to third older brother's place. Jingwan glanced at Sun Yijia and saw that she also nodded. Yes, then let's do that. Second older sister, please come in. Jingwan's maidservant nimbly put away the unsuitable fruits on the table, as well as the seeds. Luo Jingqiang walked in unhurriedly under the guidance of a young maidservant. There was a faint smile on her face. When she saw Jingwan, her smile unconsciously became brighter. Compared to before she got married, Luo Jingqiang had changed a lot. It was obvious that she was living a good life in her husband's family. Second older sister, come and sit. In any case, they were sisters, not Luo Jingying, so there was no need for formalities. Luo Jingqiang didn't hold back. Third sister-in-law, third younger sister, I'm sorry to disturb you. It's fine. Jingwan waved her hand. Sun Yijia didn't mind and smiled at her. This smile made Luo Jingqiang feel a little flattered. The Sun Yijia in her mind was still the high and mighty noble lady, and not the third sister-in-law who had married into the Luo family and had a good temperament in all aspects. Sun Yijia pretended not to see and pushed the fruit plate in her hand to her. Eat some. Thank you, third sister-in-law. Sun Yijia nodded. It had to be said that even now, when there were other people around, her temperament was still a little cold. Second older sister, have you visited third uncle? Jingwan asked. Yes, I have. She didn't have any feelings for that man. She didn't feel the slightest fluctuation in her heart when she saw him lying limp on the bed. If it weren't for filial piety, and if it weren't for the people she cared about in the Luo family, she probably wouldn't have come back. However, Luo Jingqiang felt grateful to him. If it weren't for his accident, she wouldn't have come back so easily. Although her husband's family didn't care about her coming back to her parents' home at all, and even hoped that she would come back from time to time to get in touch with them, she couldn't do too much about it. However, her official mother's attitude was out of her expectations. It was as if she had changed into another person. Fourth younger sister sent someone back to visit father. He said that he was the steward of Prince Rui's mansion. Now second older brother is the only male in the third branch. Mother asked him to take care of people. This was the reason why she had brought her husband along. However, Luo Jingying sent someone back. It must be Prince Rui. It wasn't that Jingwan wanted to belittle her. She was going to the backyard of an unfamiliar residence alone. She thought that she had something solid to rely on, but it was actually thinner than a piece of paper. Whether it would become thicker or disappear completely in an instant, it all depended on Luo Peishan's attitude. A steward, and a man who she had never seen before, could be recruited by Luo Jingying in such a short time. Even if it was a joke, it couldn't be like this. Prince Rui hadn't completely given up on Luo Peishan. Otherwise, today's matter wouldn't have happened. However, it would be soon. At that time, Luo Jingying's good days would come to an end. My husband likes to draw. He admires third older brother, who can create fine brushwork. He has always wanted to learn from him. On the way here, he was excited and nervous like a young boy. Luo Jingqiang smiled. Sun Yijia looked at Jingwan with ridicule. Jingwan ignored her. She was as still as a mountain. There was no doubt that fine brushwork was her third older brother's new creation. You're staying for 2 more days this time. Yes. Mother has already asked my concubine to clean up the place where I used to live. My husband has also been arranged to live in second older brother's courtyard. That's right. What surprised Luo Jingqiang the most was that her mother had been grounded. Now that she was in the third branch, she was no longer grounded. This didn't seem like her mother's style at all. In her opinion, everything was strange. Originally, the mother had schemed against the second aunt, but in the end, the mother had found her concubine mother to take the blame. The concubine mother had been grounded by the grandmother and had been ordered to move to the farmstead after she got married. When she returned home 3 days later, the grandmother had let her see the concubine mother. She seemed to have forgotten the punishment she had mentioned, and for some reason, the mother had not mentioned this matter. Until today, her concubine mother seemed to be fine. That's not bad. Jingwan nodded. Third younger sister, when I came here, I asked a steward who came with me about fourth younger sister's situation. Fourth younger sister seems to have a good life in Prince Rui's mansion. She enjoys silk and satin and delicacies from land and sea. Everyone avoids her and attends to her. Prince Rui also dotes on her very much. From the moment she entered the mansion until now, it seems that he has spent more than half of his days in her place. There were 2 times when Prince Rui rested in other places and she asked someone to invite him, and Prince Rui agreed. What's more, one of them was in Princess Rui's place. It can be seen that he really dotes on her. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. It seemed that even her second sister had sensed that something was amiss and was trying to curry favor with her. However, such a small matter was not a big deal. Fourth sister is not lacking in talent and beauty. It is not surprising that Prince Rui dotes on you. However, Luo Jingying had always believed that Prince Rui loved her. Now, she was even more dizzy and forgetful. She dared to snatch someone from Princess Rui's hands. Jingwan had to praise her. She really had guts. However, Prince Rui also worked hard. In order to achieve his goal, he could be regarded as a different kind of real man. It was said that one should think twice before acting. No matter what one did, it was best to leave a way out for oneself. Did Luo Jingying not think that even if Prince Rui really liked her, could this love last a lifetime? She even offended Princess Rui. Madame Lu had taught her a lot. She couldn't be so stupid, right? Did she have something to rely on? Or was she really pregnant? What kind of luck did she have? She met several people who hit the jackpot on the first try, including the one in Sun Yijiao's belly. Jingwan suspected that she was pregnant on the wedding night. Weren't there many people who didn't have children for many years? Jingwan and the others were chatting, and Luo Jingbo seemed to be very harmonious. For those who really liked fine brushwork and were all relatives, Luo Jingbo was not stingy with his time. He wanted to carry forward fine brushwork. Even if he couldn't let the world know that it was actually his younger sister's new creation, he hoped that his younger sister could see the world's admiration for fine brushwork. That was the glory that belonged to his younger sister. Although Prince Kong tried his best to prove his innocence, in the end, all the evidence still pointed to him, including the people who were detained. They probably really wanted to eat Prince Kong alive. Instead, they insisted that they were following his orders. Everything was said with certainty, and they even took out evidence that Prince Kong himself didn't know. Prince Kong was suddenly stunned. He didn't expect such a result. Originally, many people suspected that he didn't do it, but now, more people believed him. And those who still didn't believe it looked like it had nothing to do with them. In fact, it wasn't that no one expected this result, but Prince Kong didn't do it properly. Who could he blame for shooting himself in the foot? Prince Kong flew into a rage like a furious beast. He cursed that a group of dogs dared to betray him. He didn't know how many officials who were loyal to him were bitterly disappointed. In order to let him ascend the throne, it could be said that they put in a lot of effort, but they didn't expect that in his eyes, they were a group of dogs that he could order to come and go as he pleased. However, he was just one of many princes. He thought that because he was the eldest son of the first wife, he took the throne for granted. Others scrambled for it because they were ambitious. Think about it. In history, how many of the sons who finally sat on the throne were the sons of the first wife, and how many were the eldest sons? Lu Qingdi was so angry with Prince Kong that his veins were bulging. He picked up something and smashed it down. When Prince Kong saw a black shadow flying over, he subconsciously raised his hand. Then, that thing hit the ground with a bang and broke into pieces. When he took a closer look, it turned out to be a seal. Fortunately, it was only Lu Qingdi's private seal. If it was the Imperial Jade seal, it would be a big joke. Prince Kong finally calmed down a little. When he saw the furious Emperor Lu Qingdi, his legs went soft and he swallowed his saliva. Father, please believe me. I was really wronged. They framed me. Lu Qingdi looked at him coldly. Li Hongyi framed a court official. He will be fined 1 year's salary. From now on, he will be suspended from all duties. Go back to the mansion and reflect on his mistakes. He is not allowed to take half a step out of the mansion without being summoned. If he violates this order, he will be stripped of his title and demoted to a commoner. This time, Prince Kang's mind really went blank. It took him a long time to recover. Come on, drag this evil creature out and expel him from the palace immediately. The commander of the Imperial Guards personally led his men into the room and carried Prince Kong out. Father, I'm really wronged. Believe me. I really didn't do anything. Unfortunately, no matter how he screamed, Lu Qingdi was indifferent. Li Hongming, it's you, isn't it? It must be you who framed me. You despicable man, do you think you can get away with it? I tell you, don't even think about it. Li Hongming, wait for me. I will never let you go. Prince Rui lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes, indifferent. And Luqingdi, who was in a rage, didn't dare to stroke his beard. Empress Sun, they thought that this matter was over, but Luqingdi opened his mouth again. This time, his words were enough to scare them out of their wits. Without waiting for him to continue, a group of people led by Ruan Ruizhong, the Prime Minister of the Cabinet, immediately stepped forward. They couldn't let Luqingdi finish his sentence. After all, he had just attacked Prince Kong, and then he mentioned his mother. It was obvious that it was not something good. Empress Sun was virtuous and virtuous. She had been careful and conscientious in managing the imperial harem for many years. She didn't make a big mistake. If she spoke without thinking and said something she shouldn't, it would be too late for regrets. Even Prince Rui didn't want to involve the Empress in this matter. Although he wanted to be the legitimate son, and noble consort Su wanted to be the Empress, this matter was not so simple. It involved too many people. If the Empress really fell, many people would be implicated. Noble consort Su would bear the brunt of everyone's attack. The imperial court was already unstable. If there was a bloody battle in the imperial harem, it would be really, therefore, Prince Rui stepped out without hesitation. Luqingdi breathed a sigh of relief. He wasn't disappointed after all. However, Empress Sun didn't teach her son well. She is ordered to kneel in the ancestral temple for 2 hours to reflect on herself. She will stay in the imperial harem during the summer holiday next month. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, after dealing with this matter, Luqingdi took out a secret memorial and passed it to the officials to read. The western border is very important to the Qi Yuan. I believe everyone knows that although this matter didn't happen at an important pass, if it isn't handled well, it will cause a very bad impact and even affect the safety of the border. Therefore, I want to send an imperial envoy to investigate this matter immediately and make appropriate arrangements. As soon as he said this, many people stepped out to ask for the order. There were civil and military officials. If this matter was handled well, it would be a great merit. Even the princes didn't want to miss it. As for the origin of this memorial, no one looked into it because it wasn't the first time it appeared. At the same time, no one questioned the contents of the memorial. As a candidate for the imperial envoy, I have already made my decision. Old Joe, you've been in the imperial harem for a long time. This time, I'm sending you to train and don't let me down. He was only 17 years old. In the imperial harem, he had been divided by his elder brothers. Although he was unwilling and hated that he was born late, there was nothing he could do. Although he had sided with the Empress on the surface, he still couldn't calm down. He wanted to make a good achievement and impress his father. However, important things never came to him. Naturally, he couldn't touch the important things. He always came in contact with the minor details. This time, he was eager to fight for it. However, he didn't have much hope. Unexpectedly, he was surprised. After being stunned for a moment, he hurriedly thanked his father. "Don't worry, father. I won't let you down." "Very good. Go back and get ready. We'll set off tomorrow." As for the entourage, Minister Luo, do you have a suitable candidate in mind? After all, this wasn't a small matter. Naturally, it was impossible to leave it to a greenhorn. In fact, the entourage was the key. Luo Peishan was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel. Coupled with his recent actions, Luqingdi still had high expectations for the person he recommended. Luo Peishan thought for a moment and casually named a few people. Combined with the contents of the previous memorial, he recommended people from the Ministry of Civil Affairs, the Ministry of Revenue, the Ministry of War, and even the Ministry of Justice. Obviously, he had considered all the possible situations that might be involved and who would be suitable to represent them. As for which faction they belonged to, Luo Peishan said that he didn't know. Luqingdi thought for a moment and decided to arrange it like this. They were all people recommended by Luo Peishan. None of them were changed. Your Majesty, I have one more thing to say. Luo Peishan said. Speak. For this trip, perhaps we can add the 3 people who passed the Jinshu exam this year. They are all the future pillars of Qi Yuan. Why don't we take this opportunity to train them? In the future, they will be able to serve your Majesty and Qi Yuan better. In addition, they are all young people. Along the way, your Highness won't be lonely. Perhaps you can learn from each other. Minister Luo's words are reasonable. I approve. Your Majesty, how about adding Sun Bingbai from the internal court? That's great. Lu Qingdi agreed without hesitation. Thus, the main personnel for this trip to the western border was finalized in the conversation between the monarch and his minister. As for these people, the others really didn't have any good ideas. After all, Luo Peishan was really looking at the big picture and was impartial. If he wanted to squeeze someone out and replace them with his own people, it was inevitable that he would be caught and criticized. However, with Lord Jiao as the leader, Lord Jiao's birth mother relied on the empress in the harem. In other words, he was equivalent to Prince Kang's little follower. Lu Qingdi had just angered him, and now he chose his people to do this important task. Did it mean that Lu Qingdi was not completely disappointed in him? Prince Kang would stand up sooner or later. It was naturally difficult to refute something that had been decided. However, Father, according to Lord Luo's suggestion, why don't we let Lord Jiao go with us? He joined the court later than Lord Jiao, and it's time for him to gain experience. Let's not talk about what to do. Even if he just watches and listens, I think it will be very beneficial for Lord Jiao. What do you think? Prince Rui said. The 10th Wang Ye was his follower. Everyone was well aware of his intentions. Lu Qingdi pondered for a moment. Originally, the plan was to let Lord Jiao and Lord Jiao be imperial envoys. However, because of the previous incident, in order to balance things out, he naturally had to appease Lord Jiao when he suppressed Lord Jiao. However, it was not impossible to let Lord Jiao follow him and not participate in the decision-making. Approved. Thank you, Father. Prince Rui kowtowed and thanked him. Lord Jiao, who was indignant, also thanked him with joy at this time. However, his joy was somewhat exaggerated. Thinking about it, it was reasonable. His elder brother, who was not much older than him, was in charge, while he just followed him. It was a living torture. In this case, it was better for him to stay in the capital, and then go to Qingde Palace to avoid the summer heat and live a comfortable and happy life. Prince Rui glanced at him and more or less felt his dissatisfaction. He frowned imperceptibly. The other 4 did not have the qualifications to attend the imperial court yet. After hearing about this matter, they were all grateful to Luo Peishan. Not everyone would have such an opportunity when they were just starting out. It should be known that this kind of experience would allow them to have a better start than others. Moreover, there were so many officials on this trip and they had nothing to do during the journey. They believed that if they asked for advice, most of them would not refuse. After the court, Lord Luo is really not stingy to guide the younger generation. Ruan Ruizhong said with a calm expression. Even if others did not dare to point fingers at him, the rumors that caused the whole family to be afraid to go out still made him very angry. Luo Peishan still did not get along with him. Even a saint was angry, not to mention he was not a saint. If Luo Peishan wanted to go against him, why should he be polite and bear with it? The moment he made such a decision, it meant that Ruan Ruizhong had lost his normal heart. In this way, when he did things in the future, it was inevitable that he would be biased. In this way, the balance would be tilted, and he could no longer be absolutely neutral. Luo Peishan chuckled and put on a fake smile. As the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, is that what I should do? Guan Ruiz Hong nodded and turned to leave. Luo Peishan looked at his retreating figure with some pity. If a person like you one day found out that you were treated like a fool, kept in the dark and played by the people you trusted and loved dearly, how would you react? Perhaps, when you were thinking wholeheartedly for them, they were actually laughing at you in their hearts and treating you like a clown. How sad would that be? After Li Hongyuan saw the list of people on this trip to the west, although most of the people were different from the people in his previous life, it did not exceed his expectations. However, after seeing Sun Yilin and Qin Jingmin's names, he laughed coldly. To put it nicely, he was guiding the younger generation, but he still felt guilty toward these two people. The other two were just incidental. This old fox was not really that selfless. This favor had allowed him to pick up 100%. This time, there was only one imperial envoy. Without Old 10th to oppose him, Old 9th should listen to his advice and handle this matter well. Li Hongyi's stupidity could be considered as doing a good thing. He did not need to worry about the aftermath. After reading the list, he threw it aside and did not ask about it anymore. Anyway, he did not completely ignore it. If there was an unexpected situation, the people on the other side would definitely send news. Now, he should think about how to pull Wan into his arms when he arrived at the temporary imperial residence. In the temporary imperial residence, they lived relatively close to each other. However, because it was crowded, it also meant that there were many eyes. However, at that time, there would be all kinds of banquets, poetry banquets, flower banquets, and even wine banquets every day. It would be easy to fish in troubled waters. Mu'an, how are the preparations at the temporary imperial residence? In reply to Master, this servant personally watched everyone arrange one by one. You can rest assured that nothing will go wrong. That was the Master's pleasure nest. This year, there was a high chance that the future female master would also go there. Naturally, he did not dare to have the slightest neglect. Eunuch Mu lowered his head for a long time and did not wait for his master's response. He slightly raised his head and took a look. The beauty was lying on the couch with her eyes closed. She seemed to be asleep. His master with his eyes closed was always more harmless than with his eyes open. However, even so, Eunuch Mu did not dare to take another look. Tian did not need to be covered with a quilt in this state. After thinking about it, he personally took the fan and moved closer to her. Gently, with a rhythm that was neither fast nor slow, he fanned her again and again. 2 days after the people going to the west were ready to set off, the list of people going to the temporary imperial residence for the summer was also released. As for the candidate to stay in the capital to supervise the country, it was really unexpected. It was the 7th prince, who had no sense of existence. He was 2 years younger than Li Hongyuan. He was not picky in his work and was always able to complete the tasks given to him. Except for some things that had already been decided by objective conditions, the things that needed his subjective participation were basically just passable, and the results were mediocre. His biological mother was just a palace maid who died early. However, at that time, he was already 6 years old. Luqingdi did not give him to other concubines to raise, and he was raised by a group of palace maids. Perhaps because he had no one to rely on, he was not bullied or embarrassed. This time, he was asked to stay and supervise the country for 2 months. It could only be said that misfortune and fortune came hand in hand. After all, Prince Rui thought that after Li Hongyi was gone, he would definitely be the one to supervise the country. As for the Gong Prince, before his eldest brother was taken away, he shouted that it was the 3rd prince who harmed him. Regardless of whether it was true or not, Imperial Father would not let him supervise the country. Then, the possibility of it being him was very high. Li Hongyuan and the sickly 5th prince were definitely not considered, and from the start, no one thought about the 7th prince. Most likely, it was either the third prince or the fourth prince, or both. Hey, who knows, it was not even one. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, there was no Luo romping incident, so Li Hongyi was not grounded, but the one to supervise the country was still the seventh prince. In addition, of the 4 cabinet elders, except for the Grand Secretary, the other 3 were left to assist the seventh prince. This point was consistent. In his previous life, these 2 months in the capital were peaceful, but this time, it might not be so. After all, there was still Li Hongyi in the capital. Even if he was grounded, not allowed to take half a step out of the palace, don't forget, the Empress was also staying in the palace. If she wanted to do something, it was very likely that she would not be discovered. This made people look forward to it. Of course, Li Hongyuan was also waiting for this opportunity to thoroughly deal with Yuan Fangfei. With his quasi-concubine title, it was really an incomparable eyesore. On the last 2 days of the 5th month, headed by Luqingdi's ceremonial guards, a fleet of carriages with no end in sight, majestically left the capital. Chapter 167. Qingda's summer palace was not far from the capital, about 200 miles away. However, because of the slow speed, it would take 2 or 3 days, or even longer, to get there. In such weather, it must be uncomfortable to sleep in the open. However, this group of people were either members of the royal family or high-ranking officials and nobles. With a group of people serving them, they could even bathe 8 times a day properly, let alone eat, drink, go to the toilet and sleep. Of course, this was just a saying. Even the king of hell would not be so crazy. Compared with when they were at home, everything was about the same. However, this was only Jingwan's thought. Along the way, there were all kinds of complaints. Fortunately, a lot of things had been taken away by the servants in advance to thoroughly clean up the residents of the summer palace. At the same time, everything had been settled. Otherwise, it would have been even more infuriating. This time, the masters of the Luo family who went to Qingda's summer palace for the summer could be counted with one hand. In the first branch, because little Wang was about to give birth, Wang naturally could not leave. Her husband, Luo Rongwen, was an official, so he was not in the entourage. Luo Rongwei was also on an errand at present, needless to say, Luo Rongping. With his condition, it was better for him to stay at home. Nominally, Lu had to take care of him. The one who was relatively free was Luo Rongyan, who had a nominal position. However, he seemed to be stimulated and now began to work hard. Even if he did not like those things in the officialdom, he forced himself to slowly accept them. Like Zhang, Madame Wu was reluctant to leave her husband. Therefore, the 8 people of their generation did not go. Naturally, Madame Luo and the concubines and so on were even less likely to have a chance. As for the younger generation, except for Jingwan and Luo Jingbua, the others did not go. The reason was very simple. Their parents did not go. If they went, wouldn't the old madam take care of them? Madame Luo's health looked good. However, after Luo Peishan learned that he almost died a few years ago, he did not dare to let her tire herself out. Therefore, except for those who did not need to worry, everyone stayed at home obediently. The only ones who did not need to worry and could leave at all were Jingwan, Luo Jingbua, and Sun Yijia. Although Madame Luo did not say anything, it was not bad. Therefore, along the way, the Luo family could be said to be the most easygoing family. Although Jingwan tried her best to integrate into this world and did not need to look at the people under the feudal imperial society as equals, most of the time, she still tried her best to be considerate of the people who served her. If the people who served them worked hard, then the servants who served them must work even harder. Even at the moment, whether they were served or served, their status had already determined everything. If they were taken for granted, Jingwan still could not completely synchronize with their thoughts. Jingwan had been by Madame Luo's side for so many years. Madame Luo was more or less influenced by Jingwan. She did not deliberately do anything and acted naturally. It seemed that when she saw too many people wandering around in front of her, she became more annoyed and irritable. Sun Yijia had been with Jingwan for a long time and was also imperceptibly influenced. Therefore, while the servants of other families were busy with work, the Luo family section was much quieter. The servants even had time to stay in the carriage to enjoy the cool air and chat with each other. Even if they had something to do, there was no sign of them being in a hurry. Sun Yijia's servant girls gathered together with Jingwan. Third young lady has always been like this? They asked curiously. She did not quite understand what they meant. Therefore, the other party pointed to the family behind the Luo family. The carriages were moving forward, but the servants had to run in front and back. Their clothes had long been soaked in sweat. The status of the servants in charge of running was relatively low among the servants. They looked like they were mostly 12 or 13 years old. Jingwan's servant girls could not help but laugh. Our young lady has always been very good. She has a good temper and is generous to us. She never loses her temper. Even to us, as servants, she is very considerate. If there is a small illness or pain, she will give us leave. Usually, she will also say that we will take turns to take leave. I think there is no master better to serve than our young lady. They had always known this, but they had never experienced it more deeply than now. Hearing their words, Sun Yijia's servant girls were a little envious. However, their young lady was actually very good, and now there was a tendency for her to be closer to third young lady. It was their blessing to be able to serve such a master. However, a certain mama who also happened to hear these words thought more. However, if they only had this side of leniency, they probably wouldn't be able to raise these servant girls who were strict with themselves. Even if Qing Ju's temperament was a bit jumpy, she wouldn't be careless in the things that she should do. At this moment, the carriages stopped. It was obvious that Lu Qingdi was making trouble again. Qing Ju stretched her head out to look. Seeing the wet nurse in the carriage in front of them getting off and walking towards them, she hurriedly waved her hand, indicating that she knew and did not need to come over. I will go and see the young lady first. You guys prepare some iced fruits for the young lady. Also, go and find out how long we will stop. If it is long, find a place outside and open an umbrella. Qing Ju said and then got off the carriage. The others also quickly took action. Because she had been in the carriage for a long time, Jingwan was a little carsick. However, she still stayed quietly and did not cause trouble for others. Before she left, Nanny Gong and the others had already prepared a lot of food for her. They were especially particular about the food. Sun Yijia benefited a lot from the food. She was pregnant, so it was naturally more difficult for her. But, when they were preparing, Jingwan had already prepared a portion for her. She seemed to be in good spirits, much better than Jingwan. Luo Jingbue and Sun Yijia were very grateful. This little sister was so considerate. Jingwan just smiled. Anyway, she was going to use it herself, and sister-in-law was just incidental. They knew very well whether it was incidental or not. She could have told them in advance and let them prepare it themselves. But in fact, some of the things that Nanny Gong and the others prepared were specially for Sun Yijia. In fact, Jingwan really felt that it was too troublesome to ask her brother and sister-in-law to prepare another set of things. Anyway, she had to prepare more at one time. It would save her a lot of trouble. There were not many things that were specially prepared for Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia's wet nurse and the others all saw this and were very grateful. After Sun Yijia's wet nurse who specially served her in this aspect was driven away, they had been learning. But after all, they did not have enough time to learn many things. Moreover, Nanny Gong, an etiquette instructor, seemed to be omniscient in this aspect. At this time, they did not care so much and hurriedly asked for advice. Nanny Gong was not stingy. Sun Yijia stayed in Jingwan's carriage because Jingwan's carriage was not only comfortable, but also not so bumpy. In fact, when they left the capital, Jingwan had already prepared to give half of it to her. Even if she did not stay, she would have let her stay. She leaned comfortably and took a nap like this for a while. Looking at it now, Jin Qinhuang is not that bad. Wan Mimi, don't you think so? Jingwan closed her eyes and faintly made an end sound. Sun Yijia could not tell if she was really responding to her or if she was just being perfunctory. Sun Yijia saw that she suddenly became so delicate. Thinking about it, it also made people's heart ache. Wan Mimi, the carriages have stopped. Do you want to go down for a walk? Wait a moment, let's see how long it will be. When Sun Yijia heard this, she did not move. She looked at the decorations on the roof of the carriage and suddenly became interested. She carefully looked at the layout of the carriage. A lot of things looked ordinary, but if you paid a little attention, you would find that there was not a single thing that was ordinary. Ivory mats were considered extravagant in Duke Ding's Fu, but they were directly used to cushion the ground. When she first came in, she did not notice it. When she noticed it, the corners of her mouth could not help but twitch. And this couch, she did not know what was inside the cushion. It was soft and cool. Under the cushion, Sun Yijia reached out and touched it. The edges were very smooth. Because it was covered, Sun Yijia did not know what material it was made of. She simply lifted it from the bottom to take a look. Then, Sun Yijia silently put it down. Cool jade, it was actually cool jade that was even rarer than warm jade. The entire bottom of the couch was covered with it. As for the other things, Sun Yijia did not want to continue looking. If she continued to look, she, who grew up in a rich nest, would be jealous. Should it be said that he was worthy of being called the richest and most prodigal Jin Qinhuang? Just the things that were on the surface, Sun Yijia slightly estimated. His mother, the value was already more than 1,000,000 taels of silver. That's right, this carriage was sent over by Li Hongyuan a day before they set off. From the outside, it looked very ordinary and suited Jingwan's status. But inside, those who didn't know what was good for them didn't care, but those who knew what was good for them felt like they were blind. When old Madame Luo saw this carriage, she was also silent for a while. However, she heard that this carriage had been specially modified so that it would not be so bumpy. She thought about how her own granddaughter had been sitting in this carriage for a long time and thought about the matter of Jin Qinhuang. No matter how much he cared about Wan Wan, his bad reputation was something that he owed Wan Wan. Moreover, Wan Wan was his daughter-in-law from outside. No matter how good he was to Wan Wan, it was only right that he treated her well. Thus, he impolitely waved his hand and let Jingwan take it. Jingwan did not look carefully at the things on the carriage. In any case, she had seen the extravagance of Li Hongyuan's carriage. Naturally, she did not pay much attention to it. What she cared about was also the shock absorption effect. However, for Jingwan, Jin Qinhuang was actually just a person that she knew. It was more special. Aside from the status of being engaged, there was also a very intimate contact. Even so, there was still no way for her to calmly accept his things. Although in Qiyuan, after an engagement, giving some things would not be criticized, but what Jin Qinhuang did for her was considered considerate and thoughtful. To a certain extent, for example, it was usually two families who gave gifts during the new year. What he did was a bit excessive. However, seeing that her grandmother accepted it without saying anything, Jingwan did not say much. In any case, the one who enjoyed it in the end would be herself. If she used all sorts of excuses to brush away Jin Qinhuang's face, it would not only make things difficult for him, it would also make her seem pretentious. She did not want to be a slut. Even after she found out the value of this carriage, she was silent for a moment and did some calculations. And she was given a luxurious carriage that was probably worth a few 100 million yuan. When she thought about how the other party's net worth was in the tens or hundreds of billions, to him, this was probably just a drop in the ocean. Thus, Jingwan calmed down. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan's goal was to make Jingwan feel more comfortable and did not think of pleasing her. Otherwise, Jingwan's reaction would probably be so cold that he would be depressed again. However, Li Hongyuan also knew that Jingwan did not really care about material things. If it was good or fine, she could enjoy it. If it was bad or rough, she would not complain or refuse. It all depended on the environment. Therefore, if he wanted to use ordinary means like clothes and jewelry to please her, it was basically impossible. Sun Yijia closed her eyes to avoid being annoyed. Seeing that Jin Qinhuang's current performance was still barely acceptable, she decided to say less bad things about him. Of course, just this was definitely not enough. That rotten virtue of being fond of beauty was the key point. Thinking of this, Sun Yijia was stuffy again. Even if he was a Qinhuang, couldn't he be a bit more clean? There was a rustling sound outside. Very quickly, the inner curtain was lifted. Qing Zhu had already taken off her embroidered shoes. She first greeted Sun Yijia, then walked to Jingwan's side and whispered, "Miss, are you still uncomfortable?" Jingwan opened her eyes. "It's okay. Do you know how long it will be?" "I already went to ask." "Does Miss want to eat some fruit?" "Don't eat too much." "Don't worry, I know your habits." "How about this servant read a passage to you now?" When the carriage was moving, reading a book hurt the eyes. Miss never let them read at that time. Not for the time being. Jingwan sat up. "Sister-in-law, what do you think? Anyone with discerning eyes can see that I am definitely better than you." Sun Yijia teased. "Then it's fine," Jingwan said without thinking. Pregnant people fainted more easily. This was an indisputable fact. But now, she was even more delicate than pregnant women. Jingwan was also helpless. Qing Zhu covered her mouth and laughed. She took the round fan and gently fanned Jingwan. Because Sun Yijia was pregnant, there was no ice basin in the carriage. However, the inside of the carriage was much cooler than outside, so she wouldn't sweat if she stayed inside quietly. Because of this, Sun Yijia decided to stay. Otherwise, she wouldn't be willing to let Jingwan suffer without ice along with her. Sun Yijia had been puzzled before. Her carriage didn't have this effect. Now, she suspected that under the ivory mat, there was also cold jade. Fan sister-in-law. Pregnant people get hot easily. As soon as she finished speaking, the curtain was lifted again. This time, there were several people. "Miss, third young madam, there is a message from the front. There is a forest ahead. His Majesty thinks the scenery is good, so he asked us to stop. He said that we will continue after lunch. This servant will ask someone to hold up the umbrella. Come down and sit for a while." There were still 2 hours before lunch. Moreover, even if the forest was big enough, could the carriage go deep into it? As expected of the emperor, he would never consider the feelings of others, nor would he consider the feelings of others. He was really not an ordinary kind of willfulness. This stop would take at least 4 hours. They could not stay in the carriage for long. The wet nurse and the maidservant quickly prepared the things outside. Unlike other families, who had to spend time and effort to set up a shelter, they only had a big umbrella. With Sister He and Bai Xiao, they did not need to spend much effort to set up the umbrella. Then, they laid out a mat, a low table, a chair, tea and snacks, a fruit plate, and even quickly made a vase with materials from the ground. Sunny Jia saw the whole process. Speaking of which, the other families had not set up the pillars yet, but it was all done here. Moreover, it was a few servant girls who looked equally delicate. Sunny Jia turned to look at Jingwan. She felt that this result must have something to do with Sister Wan. TSK, she was indeed different. It was obviously a very simple thing, but others could not think of it. Sister-in-law, don't be in a daze. Let's go. Jingwan looked at Sunny Jia's admiring eyes and found it amusing. Was it necessary? She just made it according to the beach sunbathing in her previous life. When the two of them got out of the carriage, Luo Jingbo also came over. When he saw that the shelter was ready, he glanced at Jingwan. Just now, I asked grandmother if I should ask someone to set up a shelter. Grandmother said that I don't need to worry about it. Little sister, you will get it ready. I was thinking that how could I let you do this kind of thing? In the end, I am the one who is idling. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. Little sister, hey, give the umbrella in your hand to third young master. He doesn't want to be an idler. Luo Jingbo looked at the big umbrella. Little sister Hei could hold it easily, but he guessed that it was not light. Little sister Hei's eyes obviously had some bad intentions. To avoid embarrassing himself, he repeatedly begged for mercy. Little sister, third elder brother was wrong. Please forgive third elder brother. Third elder brother is just an idler. Sunny Jia walked over and smiled as she gently pinched his arm. Good for nothing. Luo Jingbo went from idling to living off a woman. With little sister and a capable wife, it doesn't matter if I'm not good for nothing. His expression was especially shameless. Bastard, you really are good for nothing. Luo Peishan scolded him. Luo Jingbo shrunk his neck and immediately jumped behind Sunny Jia. He pulled Sunny Jia's arm. Wife, why didn't you remind me that grandfather was coming? He seemed to have lowered his voice, but in fact, everyone heard it. Even though she knew that he was doing it on purpose, Sunny Jia still blushed. Who cares about you, you good for nothing? She quickly walked to Jingwan's side. She even wished that Jingwan's entire body would block her. Luo Jingbo looked quite aggrieved. Everyone finally couldn't hold back their laughter. It seemed that the unbearable heat had subsided a lot. You're all not young anymore, but you're still acting like children. Madame Luo laughed and shook her head. While they were joking around, 2 more large umbrellas were set up, and other things were also prepared. Luo Peishan stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. It's indeed fast and convenient. Thus, when the other families had just started, the masters of the Luo family had already sat down and started chatting. That wasn't all. An even bigger umbrella was taken down. What was different was that after it was opened, the pillars were at the 4 corners. After it was fixed, it was completely a shade. The things the servants were doing could all be placed under it. Little sister, actually, 2 of those would be enough. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Luo Jingbo looked up. This is called fun, do you understand? Jingwan said unhappily. She could say that when she was in chief and prefecture, she was used to such big umbrellas. The furthest place she traveled was her own village, so there was no need for the servants to do outdoor work. Thus, a few days before she left, she had people prepare a few big umbrellas. Only then did she realize that it was actually inconvenient, so she thought of this. In the end, Nurse Gong and the others nodded as if it was a matter of course. Masters and servants should be separated. Well, Jingwan didn't say anything. Luo Jingbo didn't know what fun was, but separating like this was indeed more comfortable than all of them being under the same shade. When the left and right families of the Luo family saw the situation of the Luo family, they were immediately envious, jealous, and hateful. Especially those servants who were busy putting up airs, they were sweating profusely. As for the masters, they didn't have a place to stay for a long time, so they felt more and more stuffy in the carriage. Even the ice basin couldn't relieve the heat, so their temper became even more irritable. Nurse Gong brought them freshly squeezed fruit juice. Everyone else used iced fruits. Jingwan and Luo Jingbua even had a small piece of ice added. However, Madame Luo and Sun Yijia used slightly cold fruits. While the others were still looking at the strange sight, Madame Luo was the first to pick up a small bamboo tube and put it into the juice. She took a sip and then let out a subtle sigh of relief. However, seeing her relaxed expression, her heart should be extremely happy. However, looking at her skillful movements, it was obvious that she was used to this. When the other three saw this, they followed suit. After taking a sip, they all felt very comfortable. Jingwan also slowly took a sip. The cool feeling slid from her mouth to her stomach, making her whole body feel comfortable. The discomfort caused by the motion sickness was almost instantly reduced by a lot. Drinking icy cold fruit juice with his family, there were people fanning him beside. Even though it was June, it was still a great enjoyment to be in the wilderness with such beautiful scenery. Jingwan looked at the forest in the distance and was a little lost in thought. Sun Yijia reached out and waved her hand in front of Jingwan. She didn't know when, but she had moved from Luo Jingbua to Jingwan's side. When she saw Jingwan looking at her, she asked, "What are you looking at? Didn't you hear me when I called you?" Jingwan raised the corner of her mouth, and a smile overflowed from the depths of her eyes. "I just suddenly feel very happy. Even if it's a hot summer day, even if it's a little uncomfortable now, I still feel very good." Hearing her words, the others looked over, especially Madame Luo, whose gaze was exceptionally gentle. "Grandmother is also very happy, isn't she?" Jingwan smiled. Madame Luo didn't deny it and nodded with a faint smile. Looking at her smile, Luo Peishan suddenly understood something. He had let her down a lot. However, even so, at this time, he couldn't bring up the idea of retiring and then accompany her to enjoy her old age. The one who understood Luo Peishan the most was indeed Madame Luo. Seeing his expression at this time, she knew what he was thinking. Lord doesn't need to think too much. This moment is enough. Even if it was for Wan, it was impossible for him to retire at this time. Although they didn't particularly understand the atmosphere between the two elders, Luo Jingbua and Sun Yijia looked at each other tacitly. Their eyes flashed with a seemingly indescribable warmth, but they understood each other's feelings. Jingwan subconsciously covered her eyes. Single people couldn't afford to be hurt. This pair of old and young represented the beginning and end of a marriage. They were brimming with happiness, and the lethality of this was extraordinary. It caused her to even have a little bit of expectation for marriage. Aiching Luo is very comfortable. Hearing this, the masters of the Luo family hurriedly looked back. Luqingdi was standing beside the carriage, and behind him was a group of people. His sons, palace servants, and the imperial guards brought along with them. They obviously came from the other side of the carriage. "Your Majesty the Emperor, you should at least let someone say something in advance. Is it really good for you to silently inspect the private lives of your subjects?" Alright, in this person's eyes, there was probably nothing he did that could be said to be bad. The servants followed their masters and hurriedly stood up to salute. "Aiching, you may dispense with the formalities." Luqingdi modestly raised his hand. He walked over unhurriedly and saw the things on the table. Aiching Luo is indeed very comfortable. His voice couldn't help but become a little happier. Along the way, in fact, Luqingdi's pressure was getting lower and lower. He felt that when he was in the capital, he didn't have such a good time. So, he stopped on a whim, intending to let everyone enjoy themselves. Then, he was prepared to see how grateful they were to him on a whim. However, it was obvious that they didn't hear the gratitude. There were a lot of grumbling and complaining. When they saw him, they were scared pale and knelt down to beg for forgiveness. But he couldn't punish them because of this. Although he was angry, he still continued to walk as if he was torturing himself. Except for Li Hongyuan, who was still calm and composed, the rest of the people who followed him didn't dare to breathe loudly for fear of offending him accidentally. But now, when they came to the Luo family, it seemed that the gloomy atmosphere suddenly turned sunny. Lu Qingdi looked around. Sure enough, it wasn't his decision that was wrong. It was clearly that the others were too stupid. Who came up with this idea? Jingwan stepped forward at Luo Peishan's signal. Your Majesty, it was me. Oh. It's you again. Good, good, good. You're really smart. Lu Qingdi looked very pleased. Your Majesty, you flatter me. I'm just opportunistic. It's nothing. You don't have to be modest. Even if you're opportunistic, I don't see anyone else who has this ability. What are you drinking? Give me a cup. Even though he was sweating now, Lu Qingdi was still in high spirits. It was obvious that he wanted to stay. The table of the two elders was quickly cleaned up. Lu Qingdi was invited to sit down. And his close servant who served him hurriedly followed Nanny Gong to prepare fruit juice and other things for him. Because they didn't bring Lu Qingdi's special things, they could only make do with the Luo family's things at this time. However, all the things were checked again and again. Although it was reasonable to do so because it was for the emperor, it still made people angry. It was Nanny Gong who had this thought. However, she didn't show it on her face at all. If she really wanted to poison him, there were many poisons that couldn't be detected by silver needles. While waiting, Nanny Gong said, "My dear minister, go get the chess pieces and play a game with me." Because Jingwan's carriage was the closest, he directly took the chess pieces from her carriage.